Soul Bond, written by Keith Rao, narrated by Marie Hathaway. I'm Keith. I'm an empath, and this is my journey. Chapter 1, The Foundation. I remember it was a nice day. My buddy Jim and I were hanging out in the skate park, likely because we had smoked a few joints that day, and it's a nice place to chill. Jim was the friend that truly introduced me to cannabis and what it could do for me. We decided to head back to my house, and on our way, we heard a couple girls trying to get our attention, and they sure did. Jim was like, "Let's go back immediately," and I was like, "All good." We hit it off immediately, and this is where my first love, Jen, and I first started our romance. We were young, and I remember her telling us we had to be quiet or her parents would hear and they would be in trouble. It's a little hard to remember the details of back then, as I am considerably older now. We had a whirlwind romance from the very start, and we both fell deeply in love. We were almost inseparable at first. Little did I know that this relationship would affect me my entire life. Hell, there were a lot of things I had no idea about then, but have since learned. Don't take that the wrong way. I thought at the time this relationship was going to be for my entire life. I couldn't see myself with anybody else. I thought at the time we were high school sweethearts destined to be together forever. We had a lot of good times together. I know that our fate and destiny had other plans for us. We were young and she got pregnant. At this point, things had gotten rough. We were arguing a lot, like a reaction to young star-crossed lovers having to grow up way too fast. It took me many more years to grow up, and I'm still growing daily as a person. In the beginning, we never had an argument, but it all started one day when Jen and I got into a fight about why I didn't fight with her. She had some misguided belief that if we didn't fight, I didn't love her, but she didn't know how wrong she was. I loved her more than life itself. I don't know why, still to this day, but something inside me said run away and run like hell. This was right before my first son was born, and I was gone with the wind. I have discovered things about myself, like having Asperger's syndrome, that may have contributed to this. I didn't know at the time and didn't figure it out until my mid-40s, but I can't say if that contributed to it or not, or if I was just scared as hell of having to grow up. I believe now that nothing happens by accident, even if we have no idea what the reasons are. Some force beyond my understanding may have had other plans for my life, and I wouldn't be experiencing what I am today if none of that had happened. I tried to get her back for a while, but there came a point where we had to go our separate ways. This would not be the last time our paths crossed in life and beyond. My life became a downward spiral for a while. I used a lot of drugs and alcohol and hadn't learned in life that actions have consequences. I never got over Jen, I never had closure, and I just did whatever it took to stuff the pain way down deep inside. I even got into some legal trouble for a while. When I was young, I told her I would never stop loving her, and I had no idea how true that would be. I'm building a foundation to what I am presently experiencing in life, but you need to know some background to clearly understand the later part of this journey. Please understand, I'm not writing this by myself. I have a lot of help. My angels, spirit guides, my present wife, who is a psychic medium, and the spirit of someone very special to me despite things that have happened during our times together on this earthly plane, as well as others, are guiding me. This is a healing journey for me, and I could never do this alone. After spending some time in jail, I met my present wife, Christine. I had no idea how important meeting her would be, but it's opened my mind to things I never expected to experience in life, as well as beyond. I had no idea my wife was a psychic medium till many years after we had been together. I didn't have much contact with Jen for years. I did have a relationship with my first son when he was younger. He even met my wife. When he got older and eventually discovered he has Asperger's syndrome, our relationship pretty much became me watching him from afar. I have that opportunity only because of his online persona. Much of what I learned about his life from his late teens to his present age was from watching his online videos and journals he had publicly written. I learned from him that his relationship with his mother was also strained for a multitude of reasons, like abuse from his stepfather and his mother's struggle with addiction. I must go back for a minute. I remember that Jen and I wanted to get married. We even met with a Catholic priest, but he refused to marry us. In life's long list of things that didn't make sense at the time, this was one of them. I now know, as a man of God and angels, he was likely being guided by forces greater than we as humans can fully understand. I always wondered how Jen was doing and hoped she was well and had a good life. I didn't think she even thought about me over those years, but was I wrong. It often takes me a long time to process things as a person with Asperger's syndrome, and I never added up the fact that she gave my wife, my kids, and I Christmas gifts every year. I didn't put two and two together until just recently in life, but I'm putting a lot of pieces to the puzzle together, not only in recent years, way more in the last year. When my first son was turning 18, I contacted Jen on social media because I was carrying a lot of guilt for not being a good enough father to mine and Jen's son. We kept in contact for a while until one day she had sent me a letter and said not to contact her, and I respected her wishes. I don't remember exactly why, but I believe it may have to do with her ex-husband, or possibly because it kicked up feelings, which it did to me. I didn't even think about it for a while after that. After a while, her husband had left her and moved to Florida. I was friendly with her and hoped the best for her, as I always did. I think when we have children with a person, it creates a bond that can't be explained by words alone. You must experience it. A permanent bond and connection that will be there for an eternity. We didn't talk a lot for a while, but just every now and then. And one day she messaged me and said she was dating a guy we knew from high school, who had dated one of our friends and had a child with her around the same time me and Jen had our son. After a while, she started telling me how he was abusive and treated her and her children badly. I felt so bad. And I apparently carried feelings for her still, and I wanted to do what I could, even if it was only listening, being a friend, and giving her advice. My wife and I are polyamorous, or at least we try to be. That means we have multiple loving relationships at one time, or can if the situation arises. Unfortunately, there isn't as many people open to the idea as I wish, and it's not all about sex either. My wife Kristine's ex-boyfriend and her first poly partner, Mike, have a relationship in one form or another, on and off for many years. They're just good friends at this point. Much like Jen and I have a lifelong connection. We don't meet people by accident, and each is put in our path for one reason or another. She has a different poly partner now and has been seeing him for over 15 years. When we first started our poly journey, we didn't know what we were doing, and we went through a rough period. I would later learn an undiagnosed anxiety disorder, as well as ADD and Asperger's syndrome, added to the problem. I included this to give you some understanding of the situation I am about to explain. When I was talking to Jen, I kind of got the vibe maybe she had some issues like my wife's ex-boyfriend Mike, who has a long-term addiction problem. I sadly came to find this to be true. This is going to be an emotional journey for me. It will be healing, but it will also be painful for me as I go over things I went through. I did shadow work a few years ago after my last experience with Jen in life. As I'm writing this, it's just over a month since Jen passed away. I'm still processing it and have experience I cannot explain easily. When I did that shadow work, I had no idea it was happening. It was like my brain just went on autopilot. It was like my soul left my body, and very well may have. Before I get into that, at some point, 7 or 8 years ago now, and Jen had called and sounded like she was in trouble and needed help on the message she left on my phone. My wife called her back and we agreed to pick her up at the fast food restaurant she was near. I learned quickly addiction played a large part in her life. I figured it had to be bad if she was calling me. She hadn't done that in years. We mostly just talked online. I now know I was a safe person to her, and she knew deep down inside I still had feelings for her. That's one of the constant factors in this journey, even when I didn't realize it. She came to my house, and that had to take some serious trust, as she didn't really know much about my wife or who she was. We all talked for hours, and she spent the night at our house. She did make some things out to be worse than they were, but often addiction clouds our perception of things. We all know alcohol and drugs only temporarily numbs the pain. But the only way to heal the pain is to do the hard work. That's not an overnight process. It's a lifelong journey filled with emotions and pain we don't want to feel, but must for our soul. The first thing you must do is admit you have the problem, and you're covering it up with things you're putting in your body. Jen had some issues with her parents and hadn't spoken to them in a while at that point. My wife and I didn't know the full extent of things at the time. My wife often gets strong inclinations to do things, and before you know it, she's already done them. In this case, she called Jen's parents, trying to resolve their family conflict and get them to allow her and her 2 children that went with her to the guy she was with's house to live, be able to come back and live there, and they agreed to it. Mine and Jen's son had already stayed there, as well as her other daughter. They all had strained relationships at this point, largely due to Jen's addiction and other issues they may have had with her. My wife and I owned our own moving company at this time, and we helped her and her children move back home. Being polyamorous and having feelings all my life for Jen, I tried to introduce her to the type of lifestyle I had and to show her the love I felt she was robbed of by my younger self. Much like other people, she really didn't understand that someone could love multiple people at one time. She even mentioned once how she couldn't share someone. Too often people think they're going to be a homewrecker or a side chick. That's the farthest of what it is about for me. I'm a very passionate and loving person, and it's often too overwhelming for one person. Often people get the impression it's dividing when it allows love to be multiplied. This became a very dark and overwhelming time for me. I had this overwhelming love for Jen, but at the same time had to watch her destroy herself with alcohol and medication. As an empath, you feel energy and vibrations from others, and in certain situations, this leads to a massive overload. There is nothing in this world more painful than watching someone destroy themselves and their life, and no matter what you do or how much you try to reach them, but you're unable to. It's extremely painful to see a person you cared deeply about become a shadow of the person they had once been. The person I fell in love with so many years ago had changed to a version I no longer recognized. Despite all of it, I knew deep down inside of me she was a beautiful soul, despite a lot of things that would happen. I did everything in my power to get through to her, including warning her if she didn't stop doing what she was doing, it wasn't going to turn out well. Did I have some psychic vision, or did her guides just speak to her through me? I have no idea. I remember we were in a park in a pretty happening little town, and some religious people started talking to her and weren't even concerned with me. Most people would likely say these are just coincidences, but if you subscribe to the philosophy nothing happens by chance, you must ask yourself if these are warnings of some sort. It didn't stop there at all. She also had several health scares. It scared the hell out of me. I really thought she was going to pass away and I would yet again never receive any closure. Addiction makes people do ugly things, myself included. Trust me, I am no angel. None of us are. Yes, I know earth angels walk amongst us, but that's different altogether. Things got out of control for a while. Addiction is a very ugly monster that destroys many a person's life. It leads people to become monsters and demons. They even use people in their game to feed their addiction and against the very people who care the most. A lot of these people can be unsuspecting because of some secret obsession with a person, or in certain instances, because they don't want others to have who they want or don't think that person is worthy of the person they can't have. Things took a mighty ugly turn, but I also know some of those other people took it farther than they were supposed to. Often things almost take on a life of their own in a sense. It reached a point that brought me to an ugly place I didn't like to visit inside of me. I had been pushed to my limit mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and eventually physically. I did things I'm not proud of. I wrote, said, and did things that were hurtful and painful to someone I truly loved deep inside. I am the type of person who usually tries to see the good in people no matter what. I was extremely hurt and in some way wanted Jen to feel the pain I felt, despite knowing I should never wish ill on anyone except for the pure evil souls that walk amongst us. This was around the time my shadow work began. This is around the point it went from what I felt was a sick and twisted mind game to me turning it into a joke. I found ways to turn it all into a joke so I could laugh again and protect my heart from feeling any more pain. I'm sure a lot of it was still hurtful, but I was in a very dark place. One of the last things I did was to make a fake profile that was an exact duplicate of one of the people that had been involved in the whole situation and took it too far. It was like I was able to get a laugh and a small victory at the same time. We didn't talk for a few years after that. I began down a path of self-discovery. I started to piece together things about myself that explained things I didn't understand about myself my entire life. I went through tons of testing, therapists, and other medical professionals for years to finally confirm what my wife suspected and led me to figure out I had Asperger's syndrome, as well as ADD and anxiety disorder, panic attacks, and a lifelong depressive disorder. I'm sure these things are increased due to being an empath and feeling things so much more than the average person. During this period of self-discovery, I stopped working and spent years fighting to get disability, only adding to the stress I was already experiencing from what had happened with Jen previously. I had stopped working during this time, and all the stress took a major toll on my immune system, and I got physically sick. I woke up one day and thought I was going to die. I had no idea what was going on. I woke up dizzy with blurry vision. I had to urinate frequently, and I just felt extreme ill. After a while, I was able to function somewhat, but I have lingering issues to this day, including balance issues, vestibular issues, and tinnitus. This all may be part of a greater process I am yet unaware of or understand for that matter. I know there are things happening to people who don't have an open mind or a third eye likely won't understand. I feel I have been going through an ascension or awakening for at least the last year, but more likely the last few, and I have only become more conscious as the earth has begun an upgrade as well. If my wife wasn't a psychic medium who has been on the money in her readings more times than I can count, I would likely think I'm crazy. I've recently started seeing more and more synchronicities everywhere I go. Remember, I subscribe to a philosophy that nothing happens by accident. Either it's a learning lesson, or we are being guided to our higher purpose, or for some higher purpose generally. Everything happens for a reason, whether we understand it or not. There are things in my life that have happened that have made no sense at the time of why they happened, but I now understand had to happen so I could understand more about the present journey I am on. My wife is my closest spiritual advisor and has helped me understand both life and death more and where their paths cross. Neither of us has all the answers. None of us having a human experience do. She had hidden her gift for a long time, till we went through some issues with our relationship and because of then undiagnosed issues. For some reason, in a meltdown, I added her to groups and pages, most of which were stupid or funny, but I added her to a psychic reading group as well. This group allowed her to embrace her gift and show how wonderful it can be. Like I said, a lot of people would call it a coincidence, but I just can't believe that. I was guided by some power outside of myself, and often am. I just needed to listen a little more often at times. This may seem off topic from where I started, but it's related to what I'm presently experiencing, and will explain more in depth later. The last time I talked to Jen was on social media a year or two ago. She had sent me a few messages and said she was genuinely grateful for mine and Kristini's help. I was genuinely nice, but had some questions why suddenly she was messaging me, especially when she had a fiancé at this point. I knew some of what had happened to her because I did check on social media to see what she was up to and what she was doing with her life. I just couldn't understand what happened, so I watched from afar. She asked for forgiveness, and my wife told her no one here would ever forgive her for everything I had gone through. That was the last communication I ever had with her, as she blocked me after that. My wife was trying to protect me and didn't want to see me get hurt again. Do I feel robbed of an opportunity? Well, to a point, of course I do, but at the same time, I know everything happens for a reason. We may someday know or never know why. Sometimes missed opportunities lead to experiences you never imagined you would ever experience or could even fathom to be possible. My daughter, my youngest child, also has a gift of being a psychic medium, but is far from understanding her gift and her full potential. She will likely be very powerful once she does, but she has a lot of work to do before she gets there. Now that you've gained insight into how we got here, we come to the part of the journey I'm presently on. and make it a little harder to understand, as many of these experiences can't be explained fully, as I yet myself don't understand them fully. Chapter 2. Signs. After the last times I spent with Jen in person, and then all drama that happened afterwards, I went on an ascension or spiritual awakening of sorts. My wife usually lets me know when activity is happening in our house, but up until this point, I had only seen a minimal number of things I personally can't explain. As I mentioned earlier, my soul literally left my body, and I went on autopilot. I understand this to be shadow work in a sense, and it was done for my protection without my knowledge. Having Asperger's syndrome, you tend to be logical and analytical about everything. Now add attention deficit disorder and you have a hyper-focus on things. There was a lot from my last encounters with Jen I couldn't figure out or why they happened. I made a few conclusions based on research I had done, but now have reasons to believe other than the conclusions I had made at the time. After that, I just got wrapped up with politics and other distractions. I did, after some time, start getting more spiritual. I meditated some, possibly in a subconscious search for answers to questions I never received. I started seeing messages of positivity, love, and spirituality, and sharing them as well. I used to smoke cannabis in my basement and cough a lot down there. Everyone who lives in my house have heard the same exact coughing coming from the basement when I wasn't down there, including myself. My wife has told me about some low-level spirit beings down there that like to be little instigators or pranksters, but they are harmless. She calls them creepers and has also told me when I thought I touched a spider web, it was a spirit touching me. Remember, she's a psychic medium and I have no reason to not believe her. Her gifts have been confirmed more times than I can count, and I have been amazed watching her during an active reading. She even believes me to be her watcher, the person put in her path to keep her from going too deep or too far. I don't understand what that means, but I try to help her whenever I can, and we bounce ideas off each other. We have at times been so in tune that I just think what I want for dinner, and suddenly she tells me that's what we're having. It's quite possible I could have manifested what I wanted, or we are so connected we communicate subconsciously. It could also be a hybrid, and both are true. When I first started seeing signs around me, I wasn't even consciously aware of it. I started seeing patches of blue light randomly near me and with increased frequency. I, of course, first looked to any logical or scientific reasons, but not one time was there any. I asked my wife, and she said it could be some sort of protective thing or an angel was near me. In my research, I found that Archangel Michael was the archangel of protection, and he used blue light in his work. I believe I am divinely protected. This is a beautiful reminder when I see it. Some of you may disagree with some of what I'm about to say. I understand in many religions, heaven is depicted in a certain way, or crossing over means something different than many of us believe. I am highly spiritual, but not very religious. There are things that cross over cultures and various societies for centuries, or much longer, that transcend any of them. I personally haven't seen for myself, but my wife has given me a glimpse of the other side. And many things are different from what people believe. I personally believe reincarnation is one form of crossing over, as you are born again, quite possibly because you had unfinished business, lessons were not learned, or some higher force has another purpose for you. Some spirits, like guardian angels, have never been earthbound, and as far as I know, will never be. There are other spirits, like family members who pass away, who become your spirit guides. They can come and go freely, but are always there to guide you when needed. Some spirits also come to you and can stay with you in the instance of soul contracts you made in life or being born onto this planet. Some people say you are creating an attachment for their spirit to you if you don't release them, but that's not always the case. We all have soulmates, twin flames, and soul tribes. Souls we are connected to on a deeper level than other relationships. We will get into that more in depth later. There are also so many little things that have happened in recent years, but even more so in the last, I just couldn't explain. This year has been a massive year of change, transition, and loss all rolled into one. Not to mention the pandemic we have been experiencing for 2 years still has no end in sight. I spent a few years in therapy till the entire country got shut down. It really didn't do much for me. I also didn't feel right doing it by video conference. I already created so many coping mechanisms from years of living with a multitude of undiagnosed issues. My wife attended with me, and the therapist seemed more interested in my wife's gift and her poly relationships. I was on disability at the time and thought I needed to be in counseling to keep my benefits. One thing good that did come out of seeing her was she recommended the doctors who diagnosed my Asperger's syndrome and attention deficit disorder. I had seen her for over a year before I was diagnosed with those conditions. I was seeing her for an anxiety disorder, panic attacks, and a lifelong depressive feeling. I did some meditations when I first started on the recent part of my journey to open my chakras, my third eye, and for healing purposes. I am positive it worked, as I have seen more than I ever imagined. Unfortunately, occasionally that can be freaky as hell. One thing I've seen before was a black shadow form in the shape of a scorpion run at me, and when I jumped, it vanished. It may very well have been one of those creepers my wife described trying to mess with me. They only can really mess with you when you're weak, and I have grown so much stronger in recent times. Do I wish to see more? Yes, sometimes, but there's also things I don't want to see. I don't think we get that choice. I often see things out of the corner of my eye. I would love to see some things, but I've already seen and felt things a lot of people have never felt or just don't notice when it does happen. We live in a busy world with lots of distractions. My wife has introduced me to several spirits that have been with me all my life. Amber is my guardian angel. She is a loving being who protects me from danger. I personally feel she has been overworked and underpaid. When I am working now and having a bad day or bad weather is coming, she guides me home even if it takes a while to figure it out. My grandfather Willard, who passed a few years before I was born, chose to be one of my spirit guides. He's been with me all my life. When I was a child, I had what I thought at the time was an imaginary friend and may have just been my grandfather. My wife believes that is correct from her communication with him. He passed away in his 40s when my mother was a teenager. I didn't know very much about my grandfather, except what little I was told about him by my mother. When I was a teenager and I got in trouble, my mother used to tell me to wipe that smirk off my face. Now I understand why. That was the same facial expression my grandfather had in several pictures I had of him. Some answers are revealed to us when we least expect them. My grandfather's spirit spoke to my wife and kept telling her how we looked like twins. His son, my half-uncle, is also with him. He doesn't speak to my wife and just stays with my grandfather. I believe he committed suicide a few years after my grandfather passed away, and they both served in the military. My mother and I do not have a relationship and haven't for many years. She has literally only come into my house one time in the 10 years I have lived here. I believe I was treated a certain way my entire life because I was a constant reminder of her father. She felt abandon her. He didn't abandon her. He passed away at an early age, and she had to grow up faster than she expected. I guess much like me, as I think about it. She puts on a tough front and a mean exterior, likely to protect herself from whatever feelings she may have once had. My grandfather's spirit has told my wife he had plans, but he didn't get to do them. Now that myself and all 3 of my children, the son I have with Jen and my son and daughter I have with my wife, all have been diagnosed with autism, it wouldn't shock me if my mother was also. Many studies show a strong genetic component to autism, and it tends to run in families. It also went undiagnosed and understood for many years. It's not fully understood, but those of us who have it like to think of it as a different operating system, that it may be correct for psychic gifts as well as a wide variety of other things. Although I think it would be interesting to have paranormal investigators come into my house, I really don't feel it's necessary. I have no reason to doubt what I have felt and seen or what my wife has told me. The house I live in is pretty much surrounded by 3 different churches on somewhat of a triangle shape with one directly behind my home. They are 3 different religions and only one holds funerals. Many spirits pass through our home on a regular basis. My wife and daughter, who also has the gifts my wife has, and others, but doesn't fully yet understand them often, say, our home is a portal for spirits. That may be so, or it may very well be them because of the gift they have. The 3 churches may be coincidental, or it could have something to do with it as well. My wife often helps spirits who recently crossed over on their journey to where they need to go in their realm. When we first moved here, my wife kept seeing a figure of a man in our kitchen, and my daughter and I would see it too. I always sense something there, but don't have the gifts like theirs, and I would just see a shadowy silhouette. His spirit scared my wife at first. Even to this day, my wife won't go in the attic of our house. Eventually, she figured out his name was Henry, and he originally owned the house we live in. Henry's spirit has an attachment to this house, and he doesn't plan to ever leave. This is his house, and he will be sure to let you know. My grandfather occasionally goes to visit my mother. After doing this just recently, he says she sees him but just thinks it's her imagination. My mother once stated to my wife how she has seen a man in her house, and it's highly likely it was my grandfather, and she just couldn't or didn't want to see him. I'm sure it's hard to get over losing a parent at a very young age, and it likely creates a lifelong fear of abandonment. This may be the reason my mother latched on to my father. They have been married for over 50 years, but I had rarely seen any affection between the two of them my entire life, nor very much towards me, just tough love mostly. Granted, I was no angel either, but I also had a lot of issues they, and society in general, failed to recognize, only leading me to having a tougher road in life. I used to say, why is this happening to me? But after seeing repeated messages to ask what this is trying to teach me, I now try to find the lesson in almost everything. I know I overdo things at times, but that's just me. That was a positive in my quest to finally get diagnosed with Asperger's after years of trying to figure it out, and after dealing with the trauma of watching Jen's addiction, then being caught up in some childish games. I finally figured out a lot of things that have happened in my life were likely from living my life with an undiagnosed condition that I received no support for except from whatever my wife could do for me. In the long list of what people would call odd coincidences, my wife's grandmother was my mother's supervisor at a factory they both used to work at. I had a friend I hung out with when I was a teenager, and my wife dated her ex Mike, who lived on the very next street. My friend Jim also lived one street over from my wife's cousins. I highly believe we were destined to meet on this planet one way or another, as we had been around each other most of our lives without even knowing. The movie 6 Degrees of Separation described a theory where we are all connected by 6 degrees of separation. 6 degrees of separation is the idea that all people are 6 or fewer social connections away from each other. As a result, a chain of friend of a friend statements can be made to connect any two people in a maximum of 6 steps. I firmly believe we meet the people we are supposed to at the very time it's destined to happen. I believe we signed contracts before we came to this planet, and no matter what, our path was already determined. That brings us to the question, then there is something we could have done to change our fate, or is it a predetermined event? Whether there is a loophole like that or not makes me look at the movie Final Destination. If we do something to change what our destiny was already written, does it just change how it's going to end? Or again, has it already been written in your cards? I can't say one way or another, but I lean strongly to it was going to happen when it was predestined to. I have good reason to believe I have roughly 30 more years of life on this planet, but how pleasant or not health-wise depends on my decisions in life. Other family members' spirits come and go from time to time. We often pick up what I call hitchhiker spirits. Spirits that randomly join on our drives to places, either because they have some message for my wife or for some other reason. When they go to the casino, my wife sees a soldier with his rifle on an old armory building they converted. This type of spirit is likely stuck in a loop from what I have researched about types of spirits and from my wife's understanding of them. These are a lot like a lot of the experiences paranormal investigators encounter on many television shows. I find it interesting, like many depictions of aliens and depictions of spirits seem very scary to people, and sometimes for good reason. Although it shouldn't be shocking, they still end up freaked out after asking for sign they are there, and when they oblige and slam a door or move an object with their energy, they scream in fear. In my opinion, if you're going to ask, you should expect a response, especially in a location that has lots of types of activity. Although there are evil spirits just like there are evil people, most spirits are good and loving beings. There have been cases where my wife was told to leave the spirit the hell alone, and not in pleasant manner, and she knew right away that's not a spirit to mess with. If a person was sick or evil in life, it's quite possible they can remain that way on the other side. Some ask for forgiveness, but I am sure some acts are unforgivable. But I'm not the one who judges that. Maybe if the spirit was a funny person before they had passed, it's quite possible they may think it's funny to move something because they like watching the reaction. Remember, spirits were once living beings in this realm. They are still living and breathing, but in a much different way. I strongly subscribe to what we come from, we eventually return to. Not our human self, but our souls. A spirit is just the soul of a person who has left their human body and as it no longer served their purpose in the earthly plane. You must think of it like two side-by-side realms coexisting, side by side with each other, and at times they intersect. Much like the concept of when worlds collide. Many people fear death, but the more you learn about it, the less it scares you. You must also understand death leads to a rebirth in a sense. Your spirit rises from the ashes like a phoenix. We're all born into this world, but we are not of this world. This may be one of the reasons many of us have allergies to many parts of it, like trees, plants, certain foods, and medications. It could be why we are susceptible to viruses and diseases. I often get driven by some force inside me that pushes me to a point where stagnant energy of life not moving forward drives me crazy inside. It's November of 2021 right now. But back in January, some force like this led to my wife finally getting her driver's license now that she's in her early 40s. This was the first change in a series of unexpected events. A few years later, my neighbor got evicted from the house he lived in with his mother next door because she was in a nursing home and the new landlord had just bought the building. The very next month, he passed away unexpectedly. He was likely in his 50s. He had a twin brother who passed away a few years before him as well. In yet another coincidental occurrence in my life, his father played in a band with my wife's grandmother. The very next month after that, my lifelong friend Brian passed away at 45. I hadn't talked to him that much in years, but when we were younger, we had some good times and seen some awesome concerts. I was in shock about this one. I just never expected it. I reassessed my life and knew disability wasn't going to work for me much longer. And being in my house thinking all the time wasn't helping. I first convinced my wife to sign up for one of those delivery apps. But after going with her a few times, I said, what the hell, this looks easy, I can do this. This started a period of somewhat rapid manifestation. I knew we were going to need 2 cars, and I always wanted a Subaru. And I said, I'm getting one, and within a few weeks, I did it. I manifested it way faster than I ever thought. Our other car was an older minivan and was getting to the end, and my purchase led my wife to wanting a Subaru as well. It was a little harder to manifest hers, but after a successful month and a half or so, the 2 of us accomplished the mission and just in the nick of time as the minivan started having issues. We are now the proud owners of Mary Jane and Frank, as we have named them. It's the first car I ever really named in my entire life. I am participating in a Ticket to Work program which allows a disabled person to try and work while receiving their benefits for a trial period. I also went through a review during this period, as well as was found to be disabled. I think of myself as having different abilities, but they have limits different from neurotypical people, normal people, as you claim to be yourselves. Over the summer and early fall, I went full-on go mode. I worked as much as I possibly could and was making a ton of money and having fun most days. Don't get me wrong, there were stressful days too, but the good way outweighed the bad. My wife decided to try some shop and deliver apps, as she didn't like the food delivery service. It's slowed down a little now, but I'm still doing well. But I also have days when I just need to rest so I don't overload myself or experience what is known as autistic burnout. It's like a game to me. My objective is to go out and see how much money I can make in a day. I had goals based on what I was earning at first, but since had to adjust those to more realistic goals for present conditions. Certain factors started working against me, like shorter days, so less time in a day to earn what I was in the beginning because it's too hard to see addresses at night, and I tend to get a little blinded by the glare of other vehicle headlights. It's kind of funny, but I'm sure my guides and angels helped. When I first developed some of my health issues, I could barely drive after driving countless miles for years. After a while, my wife helped me to understand it was an anxiety attack as well as my vestibular issues contributing. I went from that to driving roughly 150 miles a day again. Trust me, that's a lot of time alone with your thoughts. At first, I would drive myself nuts trying to hit my earlier goals. And now I've worked to understand it's just a goal, and if I don't reach it, it's okay. Life may have other ideas for me. I still do all right regardless. I know this is not my permanent career, but it's a stepping stone on my journey to greater things. After it did slow down a bit, that's when I found out that Jen had passed away. A friend Bob I knew from high school had sent me a message, but because he wasn't in my friends, I didn't see it for a few days. I hadn't even talked to this person in over 10 years. I wondered why he, of all people, randomly decided to send me a message and let me know. I asked him and he said he had seen it on someone's profile and knew we had a child. I didn't know how true that is, but I have a feeling there's more to it. I know this. If he hadn't told me, I might not even had known for years or ever. Jen's family would have no reason to let me know, except the fact we had a child together, especially when we hadn't even talked in years, and she was engaged to someone else. The saddest part is my own parents, despite our checkered relationship, didn't have the decency to tell me the mother of my child had passed away, out of respect in the least. I think they also had a part in interfering in my relationship with mine and Jen's son by taking him on trips on weekends when he would go places with them, and I likely had to work or couldn't go with them. They could have also helped facilitate a different time I could have been able to spend time with them. Yes, there were also other times when I was in rehab or jail or just on a binge as well, but at least he didn't have to see mine like he did his mother's. They could have helped me contact Jen at that time and facilitate a time that would work, but that wasn't the case. They may have also helped interfere in the possibility of talking to Jen and being her friend earlier on in life. Maybe if I had been able to, I could have stopped her from going down her addiction's path of destruction. Much like my friend Brian, Jen also passed away at 45. I don't know if there's something symbolic in that or not. I had no idea how hard this was going to hit me. I had thought I had gotten over Jen, but I realized quickly I never stopped loving her for my entire life. At first, I thought, what the hell are these people screwing with me again? But I quickly found out it was true after doing an online search. After things that had happened earlier, I questioned a lot more than I used to. I was in shock. I couldn't believe it, despite warning her that if she didn't change things and what she was doing in her life, it could be the result, and a few scares earlier should have been a warning. I still never expected it at such a young age. I started getting a lot more signs not too long after Bob sent me that message. I see synchronicities everywhere I go now, especially repeating numbers. I've seen people who look like Jen when we were young, and a few songs played repeatedly on the radio. This brings us to almost where I am on this journey presently. The story is presently unfolding, and unexpected and unbelievable things are happening around me. As we go forward, a lot of this story will be happening as I write it or am guided to write and when. The next part of this journey started a few weeks ago and has led to a process I am presently going through and experiencing that even my wife says is rare, and she has only seen one time between a grandfather who has passed and his granddaughter. Think back to what I said earlier about not all attachments are bad, and some spirits choose to attach to a person. In some cases, it's something even greater than that. There's going to be parts in this story that make people mad, that others may not understand, or reveal things about people I will leave nameless that they will not like very much. Much of it is more for context than for any recognition most of them don't deserve. A lot of it may be hard to fathom, but trust me, it's happening. Some things are hard to understand, and I know people have certain beliefs that won't allow them to believe it. In other cases, they will have other reasons for not believing it, or just not want to believe it. I've been called many things, and many lies have been spread about me and who people think I am. I'm not really concerned with what people think of me, or believe, but do believe people knew the full truth. I hope this part of my journey leads to that, but if not, I know who I am. As you will learn, so didn't Jen, as well as my present wife, Christine, and a few others. Chapter 3, Epiphany. We're getting to the point in this story where I'm going to pick up a lot of emotions for a lot of different people. Some will be in disbelief due to lifelong religious and personal beliefs. It's okay if your mind hasn't fully opened yet. Others will call me crazy, delusional, say I have issues or mental problems. I'm okay with whatever people call me. I've heard it all in my life, but that's their opinion of me, and that's none of my business. I know who I am. Others, like those who got caught up in the drama a few years ago after mine and Jen's last encounter together in life, likely are going to be upset or angry. Not because I'm going to reveal their deep, dark secrets, but because they never got the chance in life I did. There will be others like her family and children who have more questions than answers. There was one individual in the whole equation. He took things the farthest of anyone in all of it. I don't even know how Jen got caught up with this guy, but I have concluded he was infatuated with Jen since high school. He had an unhealthy obsession for her that he was willing to do whatever it took to get her. He couldn't fathom how she was never going to be with him. That didn't matter to him. He was going to try and destroy anyone or anything in his way. We all, unfortunately, have a part of us that makes us do ugly and evil things. But the key there is to have a constant balance and keep yourself grounded. Eventually, Jen started dating the guy she was with when she passed. And I imagine Jen would have had to block this other guy or he would have caused some serious issues in their relationship. I can't even begin to think what he must have been thinking or what his mindset is if he knows she passed away. There were others who got caught up in all the drama during that period, but not to the extent of that guy. I'm not even going to mention his name. He really isn't worth another thought. I'm sure they had their reasons too. For some it may have been jealousy, others may have had a strong dislike for me, and some are just straight up bullies. I'm not one to judge them for their choices or actions in life. That's not for any of us, although we all still do it. That takes me back to Bob sending me a message and letting me know Jen passed. What's his role in the bigger picture of things? When I had first started talking to Jen years ago, around the time our son was turning 18, I had a different social media profile, and Bob, like many people I knew from high school, was in my friends and we talked a little bit occasionally. I know Bob is a nice guy and he was cool to hang out with back in the day, but I know nothing about his present-day life. Like I mentioned earlier, Jen and I talked online a year or two ago, and during this time she was with the guy she was with when she passed. I didn't know what to make of it at the time, and I sure didn't want to experience more mental pain. I didn't want to go through what I had been put through and all the drama after our last encounter happened. I was generally nice to her as always, but something didn't add up at the time. She wanted me to come over and talk with her in our son's basement. When my wife and I helped her years ago move back home, our son let his grandmother know that he didn't want either of us in his house. I respect his wishes and understand fully. I had no idea what the point of this was or if I was being set up, but I wasn't going there. This is around the time my wife told her no one would ever forgive her, and then she blocked us. I had no contact of any kind after that. I did check up on her to see how she was doing in life because she hadn't blocked my daughter online. That's how I knew she was dating the guy she was engaged to. So much stuff happened at the end of our last encounters together in life that I even thought the guy was a fake profile at first. I really know very little about the last 4 or 5 years of Jen's life, and that leaves me with more questions than answers. I know she had some health problems, likely a result of her battle with addiction. I had the pleasure of knowing Jen long before her demons took control. She also got to know me before mine took over as well. Although I had issues with addiction most of my life, I no longer play with those demons. Trust me, they try to come knocking from time to time, but I'm a much stronger person now and I won't give in to them. Unfortunately, society portrays alcohol as nothing but a good time, but we all know it's led people to dark places. A lot of times people are trying to cover up their pain, but 1, it's only a temporary fix, and 2, it eventually causes even more pain. Not only to the person using it, but to those all around them. Jen built walls around her personal life and personal issues in a misguided attempt to protect her image in a sense, and to try and insulate herself from people seeing who she had become. She even did that with me for years. Maybe she didn't want to ruin what she knew I saw in her. Remember, I knew her before all the stuff in her life happened. It could also be she just didn't want me to see her like that. I sure wouldn't want people to see me at my worst. 7 or 8 years ago, when my wife and I helped Jen and her children leave the guy she was with at the time, she let me in. She let me in to see her at her worst. I have seen Jen at her best and I have seen her at her worst. I know the person she was and the person she had become. I'm a person who tries to look past people's character flaws and see the good in them. As an empath, I am attracted to a lot of broken people, and it creates a need for me to try and heal them as well. I can't say for sure why a person at their worst would let someone in, but I have reasons to believe it has to do with a lifelong connection. Even when we weren't in each other's life, we were always nearby each other. Our paths crossed several times in life and at different points throughout our lives. That takes me to some personal questions I have about what her children and family members thought about when I had re-entered her life. I always wanted to know what her children thought about it, including my own son's opinion. I mean, I haven't been in mine and Jen's son's life, and his siblings know that. I just wonder if they thought it was odd that their brother's dad shows up and helps them and their mom, or if they assumed I was put in their path for a reason bigger than they can understand, or maybe they do. I also wonder sometimes what Jen's parents must have thought. They knew I'm married and have met my wife, but do they have any idea we are polyamorous and I still want a loving relationship with their daughter as well as trying to help her with her addiction? Hell, I don't even know if they think I'm the biggest jerk in the world or not. I mean, I did leave their daughter abruptly after getting her pregnant when we were teenagers. Although I would love my questions answered, I'm not going to lose any sleep if I don't get them. It's mostly putting the pieces of the puzzle together in the grand scheme of things. I often get answers to my questions years later. I do meditate and ask my guides and angels for answers. They provide them in interesting ways, too. Being polyamorous, yet being only with my wife, I ask my guides for a love I never experienced before. As you will learn as we go forward, that happened in ways I never expected. When I start my day of work or need guidance and protection, I ask my angels and guides for these things. One of the things I've been experiencing lately is increased intuition. I will guess where my delivery is going and bam, that's exactly where it's going. There are other times I'll ask them to give me a delivery at a certain place or add another order on to make it more worth it. They have done this more times than I can count. My guides often direct me where I need to go without me realizing at the time. There are times when I'm being directed to go home, but sometimes I don't get the message right away. When I don't get the memo, I learn quickly I should have listened. My wife Kristen told me recently my guides have said I'm more powerful than I know. I'm seeing signs of that more and more, but with great power also comes great responsibility. You cannot let that power go to your head. You also need to learn to be in control of that power, or there can be unforeseen circumstances. My wife created what is known as a PK manifestation when she was young. When she gets mad, things tend to break. A PK manifestation, in simple terms, is a negative entity created by our subconscious, usually due to trauma, constantly being negative, or from the anger inside of yourself. My wife rarely looks in a mirror in the dark as she sees something she doesn't like. She recently told me she thinks she may be seeing this PK manifestation. Months ago, I was carrying around a tiger's eye crystal for protection in my pocket, and it vanished. I had no idea where it went, but just recently after I learned of Jen's passing, it magically reappeared. My wife's PK manifestation told her he didn't like that stone at first and said it was returned after he removed what he didn't like from it. I left that very stone at Jen's grave. It's something I was just called to do. It was recharged before leaving it there and its protective properties were restored. I had given Jen some crystals during our last encounters and I have no idea what happened to them or if she even kept them. I would love to hear what the last several years of Jen's life were like from the people closest to her at that time. Will it ever happen is still to be revealed, but if it's meant to be, it will happen. My wife and I often have discussions about her gifts and how they work. She tries to help me understand more, and I have learned a lot more than I could have ever expected. She has explained to me that often her guides or other spirits will keep repeating things until she does them. And if she doesn't do them, they won't stop until she does. I didn't understand totally what she meant at first, but lately I've been having similar experiences. Lately, this has been happening to me with increased frequency. Something will tell me I need to go somewhere, do something, or purchase something. I was told I need a specific bonded crystal. The first few places I went had energy I was not comfortable with. The place I normally would go for this type of item wasn't open on that day. And after looking in a few other stores, something kept telling me to go to a Tibetan store inside the mall I was in. My wife asked the clerk if she had the exact stone I was looking for, and she grabbed one, and I knew after some debate with myself it was the right one. I was guided there, and that was the crystal I was shown. I took it as a sign and now wear it daily except in the shower. One of my daughter's spirit guides' name is Cass. My daughter talks with him quite often. If my daughter does something she isn't supposed to, he will let my wife know. My daughter has done some internet broadcasts and he has made appearances in them. To explain more, she would be doing a broadcast and people would ask her who the guy behind her was, and she was quick to tell them. It takes a powerful being to do that, as it takes an intense amount of energy. Cass was a living person before, and he died in a car accident of some kind. After Jen's passing, my wife got a message and it said Day of Reckoning. She didn't totally understand what it meant at that point. After that, Cass revealed to my daughter that there was a spirit council. These beings make extremely powerful decisions in the spirit world and determine what happens to your soul in the afterlife. These two incidents may be related, or it may have been other people's Day of Reckoning that is coming. I don't have the answer to that question right now, but I'm slowly piecing it together. When you appear before the spirit council, you're going to have several choices to make, but they decide ultimately what you get to do. They make the rules and decide what your purpose is going to be going forward. I have experienced so many things at this point, I have no reason to doubt any of this. I know some of you may doubt what I'm saying, and I'm okay with that. I know doubt is part of the human experience. I recently asked for healing in a meditation I was doing, and yet again, I was not disappointed. I literally felt the energy and love around me. My wife mentioned she was going to tell me something, and a large group of light beings told her to leave me alone. I don't know what they are exactly, but I know they are very powerful healers. When you're lucky enough to feel this, it is powerful and soothing to your entire soul. There are no words that can explain it except it's just pure, loving, light energy. My guardian angel a few months back let my wife know she was going to merge with me. She was, for a temporary period, going to merge with my soul. Angels and other beings often surround us with their healing, loving, and protective light, but other times it needs to be done from the inside out. Even as an empath, it's hard to fully feel or understand this process, but you feel different than you normally would. This is not the same as being possessed by a demon or evil spirit. That's when an evil spirit is taking over your soul for purpose we don't even want to think about. You must understand not all spirit attachments are bad, but remember there are also evil forces in this realm and on the other side. Good and evil still exist, but it's all about balance. Biblical concepts give us visions in our head of what things in heaven and hell and the afterlife are like. Open your mind for a moment and realize it may not be exactly as described. Hell may very well be an eternity of reliving one's evil deeds and wrongdoings, and heaven is on the other side, but you get to heal and right your wrongs you did on earth. Let's go back to the Spirit Council again. When meeting with them, you have several choices. You can choose to be reincarnated, become a loved one's spirit guide, and as I will discuss going forward, in ways that are rare and unexpected. One thing I think about is the depiction of streets paved in gold despite money having no value on the other side. This may simply be symbolism for riches beyond our human understanding. Another thought I have is that when they mention the light at the end of the tunnel, it's more the pathway to being reincarnated in a human body. Many people have lived several lives. My wife has talked about some of mine, but that's not her expertise. I've been told that I've learned the lessons I need to learn in this lifetime, and when I meet the Spirit Council, I will have the choice of coming back to the earthly plane or I can stay with Amber. I am sure there will be other choices in front of me as well because of soul contracts I've entered into before this lifetime. As we reach present day and what I am presently experiencing, we have reached the point where things may shock, anger, and confuse people, but I ask you to open and expand your mind. Understand this is not a sick joke. I'm not some evil person. I'm not trying to screw with your head in any way, shape, or form. And everything going forward comes from a place of love and my own personal experiences. I also ask you to understand I do have mental health and developmental disabilities, but I do not hallucinate, have delusions, or anything similar. I remind you I'm not writing this alone. I have a lot of help from forces and beings beyond my understanding, but I must tell the story. Chapter 4. Awakening. As you've realized by now, I have had many experiences throughout my lifetime, and even more than I have mentioned so far. I have been experiencing these with increased frequency, and I welcome the positive and loving ones. None of them up to this point have been as intense as the ones I have been experiencing since Jen's passing. I was sitting in bed one night, and I was staring at a shadow on the wall in the corner of my room. I just sat there watching it for a while. After a few minutes of this, my wife said there was a woman in the corner of our room, but she couldn't tell who it was. Often when spirits have just passed, it takes a little while for them to wake up. If someone passes in their sleep or unexpectedly, it can take them longer to understand that they have passed. There are beings on that side to help them with their journey. We all emit energies and frequencies. I have tinnitus, which could be a frequency I personally can't or haven't tuned into. I believe a psychic medium like my wife has tuned into the frequency and energy emitted by spirits. It may take a bit of time to tune into the frequency, like when we had old-style radios with the round tuner knobs. My wife, without saying anything, called our daughter into our room, and she immediately reacted with a scream and asked why Jen was in our house. Don't take that the wrong way. Even psychic mediums can still be shocked by spirits. My wife has often feared or been scared by different spirits at times. This was the most unexpected thing I have experienced in my life to this point. The first thing I kept thinking, why the hell would she come here to me after everything that happened? I just kept asking why. At this point, my wife, Christine, began to communicate with her and started to wake her up, as she describes it. This began an intense healing process in revisiting parts of our lives I had buried for many years. I've been communicating with her ever since, either speaking to her myself and with my wife speaking to her spirit directly. There will be some people at this point that will say, why didn't she come to be with me then? Trust me, she has visited many of you and will continue to. Just look for the signs she has or is showing. This is an ongoing process, and I can only reveal what has already happened or what is presently happening. Even I have many questions at this point. The answers will be revealed when they are meant to be. Remember earlier I asked my guides and the angels for a love I never felt before. This was something I couldn't imagine in a million years. We have gone through our mistakes and regrets in life and agreed we will both let them go now. It does neither of us any good to hold on to them. When I say we spoke, try to remember sometimes it's me speaking to her and other times it is us communicating through my wife and her gift. Again, there is a reason she was put in my path, and she has those gifts. Never have I had this much of an interaction with any spirit other than my guardian angel Amber and my spirit guides. No, that doesn't mean she speaks to me nonstop, and she is not always with me. Spirits have other people to visit and other tasks they must do. There are several songs that were recently released, and I hear them repeatedly on my radio. The first one is Easy on Me by Adele. It describes to a T how Jen would feel about not giving me a second chance when we were young. The next one is Knowing You by Kenny Chesney. You will just have to listen to this one to understand. One that's not even played on the radio but I stumbled upon was Even Though I'm Leaving by Luke Combs. The song is about his father passing away and he is telling him although he's leaving, he will still be right here. There are other songs that bring back a lot of memories, and others likely hold a hidden message. A lot of songs I listen to often take on a different context after different events happen in my life. The solo project Soli Erna did entitled Avalon could be the soundtrack to this journey. Now that I've gotten off topic slightly, despite it being quite relevant to this whole process, Jen spoke to my wife why she chose to come be with me, and she said I was safe. I felt safe to her. She also mentioned she wanted to go home at first, which I imagine most spirits feel at first. Remember, Jen always knew deep down inside if she needed my help, I would be there for her, like when she was with the guy she was with when me and my wife helped her. Although I am learning a lot of why things happened and what went wrong, I'm also learning there's parts of the story I can't confirm. There are people who can confirm other things, but none of us will know the full extent of what happened in life. Only if she chooses to reveal it and then someone or some event confirms it. Despite everything that happened in our lives, I now know we both loved each other deep down inside. I also know you don't always get second chances, so never waste an opportunity. Pain can make people stuff their true feelings for a very long time. So can pride. I haven't even begun to discuss all the experiences I've had with Jen's spirit and soul. This is where the plot is going to thicken. Think back to when I mentioned my guardian angel Amber merged with my soul. When Jen made her choice of what to do in the afterlife, she made the decision to merge with my soul. There is no easy way to say that, and it's very rare. Remember, my wife, the psychic medium, has only seen this one other time, and there's little info on it on the internet. Some at this point from her past may wonder why she didn't choose them. We had formed a connection on this planet long ago, and possibly from before coming to the earthly plane. Remember, we have soul contracts with soul mates, twin flames, and soul tribe members. We had some lifelong bond and connection that pulled us back together throughout our lives. I know this is getting complicated at this point, and there are so many more things I can't explain. But things keep happening, and that reassures me this is 100% real. If you're one of her children, at this point you may be wondering, why didn't she become your spirit guide or choose to be with you? Trust me, she visits you often to see what you're up to and to make sure you're okay. Again, I say open your eyes and see the signs. At times she's going to send you messages she loves you, even if she works through others. Trust me, at this point, I still don't know what's to come and what the purpose of this process is, but I am embracing every moment of it. Although our souls have bonded or merged, for a lack of better words, it doesn't change who Jen's spirit is, or who she was as a person, the one deep inside before all this stuff in life happened. It also doesn't mean I'm going to suddenly take on her personality. We are still unique souls, but just bonded together now. Jen used to say, a lot, and at the time it annoyed the hell out of me, but what I would do to hear her say it now. And I found myself saying it randomly a couple of times, and I used to get mad when other people said it. I have talked to myself a while, but now I have conversations with Jen I wish I could have had with her in life. I do this out loud, so if you see me, just know I'm not just talking to myself. I wouldn't doubt some people have seen me and thought exactly that. One thing in this process so far has been feeling her energy and her feeling mine. Remember, I have Asperger's syndrome. I wanted to rearrange a room in my house so I could try and make some music, and until it was done, my mind was racing, and I had to get it done. This has happened for many things lately. That unexplainable force driving me to do things I feel I just have to. Jen told my wife she didn't like it. I guess she got to see what it was like to be an autistic person, in a sense. I've also felt her energy as well. When she has feelings of sadness, remorse, guilt, or anger, I feel it. When this process began, I kept arguing with my wife and getting irritated at her for nothing. Jen's spirit was having some animosity at this point. But can you blame her? She didn't understand the concept of polyamory. Her spirit has said she didn't want to be a side chick, and I did my best to explain that's not how it was supposed to be. For those of you who may be in tears or disbelief at this point, trust me, I have cried many tears in the last month. I've cried tears for your loss as well as my own. If in the grand scheme of things, the only positive that happened in her life was the time her and her family got together over her final years in this realm, I am glad that I helped to make that happen. To those who are angry at this story right now, I implore you to look inward and see what inside is causing this anger. I also implore you, before judging me, know that we all have deep, dark secrets, and no one on this planet knows everything about you, except you and those you will meet after leaving this earthly realm. Be glad you were lucky enough to have whatever relationship you had before Jen passed. I didn't get that opportunity. If this is hard for you to fathom, imagine how it must be for me. As a person with Asperger's syndrome, things such as the experience I've been having are very hard to believe. We are a literal bunch and often need scientific proof something is possible. I need no scientific proof. What I have felt as of late only reassures me of how real it is. There is some force driving me to write this story at this very time, and it's flowing out of me like nothing I have ever wrote before. One odd thing that happened with the music I've been hearing on the radio, Everything I Do It For You by Bryan Adams was mine and Jen's song when we were together as teenagers. When this process began, I heard that on the radio one time and haven't heard it since. I hadn't listened to that song in years and would always change the station if it came on. I did hear Heaven, another Bryan Adams song. There could be multiple messages in that, but I'll let you interpret it yourself. That takes me to when Jen's spirit told my wife to have me listen to the song Blurry by Puddle of Mudd, because that's how she felt about me. Yet again, it was a moment I was driven to tears. I have been experiencing an emotional roller coaster over the last month, but I also know that it's also her processing events from her life. At this point, you likely have a lot of questions. Whether or not she can see my memories is not something me or my wife know either, but lean to that's probably not likely. My wife has seen my soul has tears in it, but it's healing. This is something I didn't know existed and never dreamt possible. In life, we as humans get married to form a lifelong bond. In the soul bonding experience, Jen had her soul form into an energy marriage with mine. Our souls are energy whether we are alive or have passed away. It's gluing two souls together in a sense. It's a bond that in my wife's experience is rare. This is way more powerful than the bond of marriage. It's something that happens on a higher emotional level. It's different than an attachment. For example, the grandfather who wanted to protect his granddaughter. My wife believes it's a high honor to have a soul bond because it's a higher form of love. An attachment is more like a clingy, needed soul. You serve some purpose to them, possible amusement, or bad things in a case of negative attachments. A perfect example of an attachment is Robert the Doll, which the movie Chucky was loosely based on. If you are even more confused than you were before, I understand. This is hard to grasp, but imagine what it must feel like me for a minute. My wife has said this bond is only going to get stronger as time goes on. If you don't understand this process, just think what it's like for me. I'm experiencing things I never have imagined and have no idea what to expect or what comes next, but I'm also being driven to do things along the way. In conversations I have had with Jen's spirit through my wife, she told me she felt ignored, that her kids didn't need her that much now they had grown up. I asked her about her fiancé, the guy she was with when she passed, and she said even he started paying less attention to her. I don't know how their relationship was except for what she chooses to share with me. She said everyone in her family was wrapped up in their own lives by the time she passed. I know when she was in the throes of her addiction, people likely ignored her. There were also many who enabled her for ulterior motives. When she was experiencing her problems, it was overwhelming, and it took a major toll on the people closest to her emotions. There is no pain worse than watching someone you love to kill themselves with what they are putting in their body. It's also very painful watching what it does to the people around the person. The worst part is doing everything you can, and no matter what you do or say, you can't truly reach the person. I've been down memory lane a lot in the last month as well. Yeah, there were lots of missed opportunities and people who interfered with fate, but that's on their karma. I can dream about all the what-ifs I want, but it won't change a single thing, no matter how much I wish it could. Everything that has happened up to this point has led me to exactly where I am and what I am experiencing. The universe has bigger plans for our souls, and I'm going to enjoy every minute of the ride. This gives me another chance to have a relationship with the beautiful soul Jen is deep down inside, in a way I never expected or imagined in this lifetime. Spirits have things they have to do on that side. This could be a multitude of things, and I'm not versed in the many different types of tasks spirits are assigned. Jen is presently reading a book. Neither my wife nor I know exactly what the book is, but she is spending a good deal of time reading it. Not that time is a concept that matters on the other side. As of earlier, my wife said she was on chapter 7. I have seen from the book The Afterlife of Billy Fingers that when you get to the other side, you spend a lot of time going over your life. I'm leaning to conclusion this is Jen's personal book of memories. This may not be accurate, and the answer may be revealed later. As far as I know, this is just the beginning of whatever is to come. I feel there is some bigger purpose to all of this, and I will spend my life doing what I can to make sure the desired results are achieved. I may not know now what all of that is or what I'm supposed to do, but I am being guided more and more every day. Jen's spirit told me she wanted to right her wrongs, and this may be her way of doing that. Angels work through people all the time, and miracles happen all the time. One example I can think of is that Dale Earnhardt died in a wreck at Daytona Speedway. After his death, NASCAR made major security upgrades, including a safer barrier. No one has died at that track since his passing, despite Ryan Newman being in a horrific crash that everyone thought was his demise. Millions of people said prayers for him, and miraculously 2 days later he walked out of the hospital. And he was back behind the wheel mere months later. I strongly believe Dale is the protector of Daytona Speedway now, if not all NASCAR. If that doesn't say something about miracles and the power of prayer, I don't know what does. And remember, I am not religious, just spiritual, and I went to Catholic church as a kid. When I wake up now, I thank my guides and angels for giving me another wonderful day of life and count my blessings. Not that I'm really keeping score. I don't literally need to count my blessings. I just appreciate everything I have and am grateful for whatever gifts I am provided daily. I know I am going to learn more along this journey, and I know there are things that I may never find answers to. There are others who may be able to confirm those answers, and they may be put in my path at some point. And if you are one of those people out there with questions or may have pieces to add to the story, I implore you to seek out my wife's help and assistance. She may be able to help you as much as she is doing for me. I just ask that you remember she may not have all the answers, and sometimes things at the time might not make sense, but later trigger something that reveals what it was all about. You must also understand spirits communicate and choose who they communicate with and when. Jen's spirit has told my wife there are some letters out there with her true feelings about me. When I interacted with Jen a few years back when my wife and I helped her, my wedding band had disappeared. I thought I just lost it, but after asking her, she said she took it. She wanted something to hold on to of me. I fully understood and wasn't mad at all. She said there's a box with these things in her stuff, but if there is, it hasn't been revealed to me as of this time. I also wrote some poetry when we dated when we were young and wonder if she held on to it. I believe she told me at some point along the way she did still have some of it. I was wondering about what I wrote and thought it would be interesting to read something I wrote when I was young, before all that other stuff happened. I tried asking her if they were still somewhere and wondered what they might have been called and had always and forever pop into my head. I don't know if that was a message from her or if something was jogging my memory. I wouldn't stop hearing it till I wrote it down, so I didn't forget it. This is just another of the many messages coming at me that I don't fully understand. My wife has told me my guides told her in 3 months, which will be February of next year, my life is going to be propelled forward. Things will come in a fast and furious pace. Before I start pulling this all together, I was talking with Jen's spirit and said I just wish the truth about me would be revealed to those who thought I was a villain in her life. She spoke through my wife and said, "It will all be revealed in time." A good portion of my life, I have felt a void, like a piece of me was missing. It had nothing to do with my wife. I could never picture my life without her. I just felt like something was missing from the equation. I haven't felt like that in weeks. I am content and feel more alive than I have in a while. Don't forget, I have had a lifelong depressive disorder, so that hasn't helped either. Nor does this time of year with the longer nights and less daylight. We are also being affected by the solar eclipse energy from the solar eclipse that is going to happen this Saturday. Granted, I still have bad days and react in ways I shouldn't, but I've become more aware of these behaviors and try to consciously adjust them to something more positive. Another thing Jen's spirit has told my wife is that I don't take care of myself very well, and that is totally correct. I don't eat properly, and I have needed to quit smoking for quite a while, and despite watching my father-in-law battle a chronic lung problem from years of smoking, haven't been able to. I am now becoming more conscious of that, and I'm being driven to start quitting. I find myself saying to her, how long will I go till my next cigarette? If I don't make it to the time, or I'm just having a bad day, I must tell her I will try better, or I will do better tomorrow. I am being made consciously aware of my behavior, and I am starting to correct it. This hasn't happened to me before I started this process, and I have no reason to think it's spirits other than her. If it was my guides and angels, I would think they would have guided me down that path before this point. Everything happens at the time it's supposed to. I have never said that more in my life than now. That still doesn't make it easier to accept that you may never have answers to some questions. Every time Jen and I crossed paths in life, it ended in an abrupt manner. When we were young, I got spooked and ran. I tried to get back with her after that, but she had already started seeing her other children's father. When our son turned 18 and she sent me those letters and the times in more recent years when she shut me out and all the drama happened. I'm sorry to keep describing it that way, and I could call it bullying, but it doesn't matter how I describe it. It is what it is. Once again, at that time, Jen let her walls down for me and then built a bigger one around herself. She let her fiancé in after that, but how much is the question? Our connection could have very well affected this relationship. I mean, she did contact me a year or two ago again when she was with this person. If a person was truly happy, it's not likely they are going to contact a past love of theirs unless you understood polyamory, which, as we discussed, she did not. I wish she would have just ignored my wife telling her that no one was going to forgive her here and tried again. But something inside her wouldn't allow her to swallow her pride and do it. After that last encounter with Jen in life and all the drama that followed, a couple of other events happened in my life, only adding to my mental anguish in life. In 2015, after all that, my cat died. I have lost a lot of friends over the years, more to life circumstances than to them passing away. Most of those cases happened more recently. That cat was my best friend. It was something I was very close to, like no other animal. My wife's grandmother passed away around this time after she had a premonition dream it was going to happen. And my wife had an appendectomy that went horribly wrong about a year after my cat passed, if I remember the timing correctly. If you've been paying attention up to this point, I have a long pattern of losing those I care about for one reason or another. I didn't get a lot of closure after what happened. I just moved on and stuffed it down inside, as well as doing the healing shadow work I mentioned earlier. My wife, in my opinion, almost died from the surgery she had. She has lifelong nerve damage to this day. I thought I was going to lose her after having lost Jen again. That's why this is so hard for me. I must go through the pain of losing her again, and I had to go through it multiple times in life. But this time is different than before, for obvious reasons. I know I wasn't with her anymore in the earthly plane, but it didn't matter. I always had hoped someday she would find her way back to me and things would finally work out. She has found her way back to me, and in a way I never imagined, but not in the way I hoped it would be. I know I am experiencing a loving and beautiful thing I can't explain, and most people likely will never truly understand the full extent. But I don't know that for sure. The Earth is said to be headed for some type of upgrade in the next year, and many things are going to change. And truths will be revealed. At this point, I can only imagine what it's going to be like when it happens, but I know it's going to be amazing and wonderful to those who are willing to accept it. Think back a minute to the turn of the century, from 1800 to 1900. We didn't have a smidgen of the technologies we have now. We have advanced a millennium in just over 100 years. Many of the technologies were dreamed up in people's minds. Or were they? Were they being provided messages from spirit angels and guides, as well as archangels, who are the most powerful of all besides what I refer to as the Great Spirit, much like the Native Americans did? Some people call it the Source. Some call it the Goddess. Some call them gods, and some just call it God. What you choose to call it doesn't matter in the larger scheme of things. Remember, many of these developments were also accidentally discovered after they appeared mysteriously here on planet Earth. My wife had mentioned earlier the book Jen's spirit has to read is 45 chapters long. I am assuming one for each year of her life. Now imagine for a minute how enormous that book must be. We can picture a book in our imagination, but not that so vastly contains the information from your life. Many books have been written and contain many hundreds of thousands upon millions of words. Most of these books, even autobiographies, only contain as much info as the writer chooses to share. Now imagine how large a book would have to be to contain every memory you ever experienced. Will this lead to better communication between her spirit and myself? I sure welcome it if it happens. At this point in the story, if I was the guy Jen was with when she passed away, I think I would have some questions about all of this, but then again, maybe he knew this deep down inside already. Only her and him would know, and even her spirit told me I am presently not able to confirm it with him. She may not also want to tell me about their relationship in an attempt not to hurt me. Remember, Jen in life built walls around her. It also may be a case of she first needs to read what's in the book of her life. Remember, again, I have no idea how this process works or what to expect, except for what I am told, like the bond is going to get stronger. Since Jen's passing, I have been to her grave several times. This will take us to some more of those coincidences that seem odd, but may very well be messengers on our path in life. The first time I went, my wife drove me there and Jen's spirit went with us. I guess she needed to see for herself at this point. We had no idea how we were going to find her grave, and there was no marker even at this point. We had trouble at first, and two older Polish gentlemen who barely spoke English kept looking at my wife. When we first pulled into the cemetery, Jen's spirit said she was in the back. We had no way of knowing one way or another. That's when we ended up in the area with these two gentlemen. They asked her if she found who she was looking for, and despite having issues with pronouncing her name, they pointed us to what we would find out later was her grave exactly. My wife went back a couple days later and asked the groundskeeper, who hadn't been there when we spoke with the two older Polish gentlemen. He guided my wife to that exact grave. He was very nice and explained a lot of the cemetery's rules. My wife explained about the two guys, and he had no idea, like they didn't even exist or were never there before. My wife and I believe her guides put them in our path to direct us where we needed to go. After she found this out, she called me, and I joined her at Jen's grave. That's when I left the crystal I left there. Something just made me leave it there. Maybe it was her, so visitors could have a sign her soul was okay. I also left it as a form of protection for her soul, although she is with me, and that is just her body's final resting place. My wife went there alone herself when, at first, I wasn't feeling Jen's energy, and me and my wife kept arguing when her spirit first appeared. She left a pumpkin, some coins, and asked her to stop. My daughter could even feel it, and told Jen's spirit if she didn't knock it off, she was going to banish her. My daughter didn't really want to banish her. She just felt bad for her mother and what was happening. Jen's spirit has behaved much better since then. This was the beginning of this whole process, and there is still a lot to process at that point. It was slow one day at work, and I was close by, so I figured I would take a drive through and see if there was a grave marker yet. As I was approaching, I got dispatched a delivery, but I was so close, so still drove by. There was no marker, but two small flower pots alongside the pumpkin, which had the crystal on it with some of the coins. I had the thought of a message in a bottle pop in my head the other day. At first, I thought it was something to tell my wife to make for a business she would start someday. One of the things I would like the world to know about me is how much I loved Jen all my life. I loved her more than most people will ever know. I feel this way still to this day. Those closest to me know, and she knows. I put the words, "I loved you all my life and more than most will ever know," in a jar, sealed it with wax and put a blessing on it and tied it to the rose bush above her grave. It's my message to her and anyone who comes across it. But it's also a message to her children and family that despite what happened in life, she has loved them all her life, and more than they may ever know. A lot of things in life likely clouded their vision and affected their view of her much like it did for her. She thought people were going to forget about her and they didn't care, but after seeing the flowers, I told her people cared and miss her more than she knows. It made her feel good seeing them there. Nobody wants to be forgotten. This story is going to be a legacy of her life and her soul. It will for the others in the story as well, but not to the same extent. I don't know what will happen if someone opens that jar, but I wish them well if they are brave enough to do that. Most people have more respect than that and will respect someone's true feelings, and aren't going to mess with someone's words to someone who has passed. Of course, there are obvious people who may do it accidentally. I made sure it could be easily read from the outside. It's okay if people touch and read it. That was the point of leaving it there. Open it, and that's a different ballgame altogether. At the least, it's highly disrespectful. Chapter 5. Reconnection. At this point in the process, I must remind you I know very little about what's going to happen, and I only speak from my own personal experience and my wife's communication with Jen's spirit. I can be pleasantly surprised one moment, and at others my energy drops like a rock. This morning, a song called Levitating was on the radio. This song is played more than any other song I've heard on the radio in years. I've been trying to figure out what the message is in the song for months. While it was playing, I got a feeling like I was floating, not literally, but just a general feeling of lightness. My wife and I were discussing some things from our life, and the energy shifted. I went from being aggravated and the two of us arguing to tears, to shutting down and just sitting in silence for a bit. I don't know what it was, but I couldn't shake the feeling all day. I usually take a couple of showers a day. I'm a water sign, and I use my time in there to meditate and do a cleansing visualization. I asked to wash away blockages in my life and all negative energy I picked up during my travels. While we were on this car ride, a rock was shot up by a truck and chipped my wife's windshield. I immediately got the message that it was a wake-up call. I have been trying to find answers on soul bonding and soul merging, but there is very little info on the subject. Several of the pages I tried to go over had errors or wouldn't load. Most of the information I've come across, information which had to do with twin flames, but mostly had to do with when they are both alive and in the physical realm. I came across a few articles and comments about what happens when a twin flame dies. Yet again, there was very little info. In one article, the author wrote that they were having very similar experiences as me, both before and after their twin flame had passed. There were comments on other websites where there were several people who had also had very similar incidents, like songs playing repeatedly on the radio. For one person, it had been happening for 4 years. I guess in a way, then, this journey may very well be a guide for those who come after me. At this point, we must dig deeper into what twin flames are. Twin flames are souls that are connected before they come to the earthly realm. They are two souls that come from one soul, and we return to that state again. That doesn't mean they won't still have their own identity and still be the soul of your past loved one. Twin flames are mirrors of each other. That's why they often have rocky relationships, but despite they are continually pulled back together. Twin flames share a collective energy, and that energy is magnetized back to the other. Whether it be here in the earthly plane, or in the afterlife, or as in the situation across both. When twin flames reunite, they almost instantly have the same connection they did during their previous meetings. Some of the people in those articles felt they were easily able to communicate with their twin flame who has passed, and they often receive signs they are with them. There were several theories of what happens during this process. I'm going to go through my own experience and thoughts on this. I have now come to believe the day Bob had sent me the message that Jen had passed away, and I read it exactly when Jen's spirit and soul reconnected with mine. This was just the beginning of the process. There are likely going to be many steps along the way. My wife told me earlier Jen was on chapter 7 of the book she must read on the other side. The true beginning of the reconnection process started when Jen's spirit made her decision to form a soul bond and have her soul merge with mine. You see, there are some in-depth theories on twin flames meeting each other in different human forms in the same lifetime. For example, if one passes away at a young age and the other meets them again after reincarnating, this doesn't always mean into a newly born person's body either. That's a much more complicated subject than I would like to get into. At this point in the story, I must pause and say something to those closest to Jen. It doesn't matter if you're her parent, her child, a past lover of hers, a lifelong friend, or someone whose life was controlled by some unhealthy attraction to her, or someone who had an unhealthy jealousy against others who had what you wanted. Much like me, this part of her journey has just begun. She's going to spend some time looking at her life and reliving many memories. You get to go back and relive your memories of her, but she's reliving every memory of her entire life. Much like I have been over the past month or so, she is going to feel some very strong emotions and energy, and I'm likely to feel it too. All your pain isn't instantly removed when you arrive on the other side. There is a process you must go through till you get to that point. The sheer number of words to write your entire book of memories is unfathomable to the human brain, or as much of it as we have learned to use up to this point. We must go into the Akashic realm philosophy now. In the Akashic realm, there is an Akashic record, a book that contains the record of all souls that have incarnated. This takes us to the principle that our life is already written in stone before we are born. Although I don't understand it or why it's happening, this leads me to believe it's been destined since long before now, and before both me and Jen were born onto this planet. As this process goes forward and the energy gets stronger, and our souls connect fully, the gifts I've been experiencing may get stronger, and I have many more unexplained experiences. I may be visited in my dreams. I may have a need to do things I never did before or things she always wanted to do. In a sense, her spirit may live vicariously through me. Much like people still don't fully understand autism, I may be a piece of the puzzle for others who are experiencing this or have previously. Although it may seem rare at this point, it could be more common than we are aware of. There is likely other like me having similar experiences and be confused like myself. I, fortunately, have the advantage of living with 2 psychic mediums, but there are likely others who have no idea what they are experiencing. I can only imagine what that would feel like. They might think they were hallucinating or have some mental health condition. Now imagine the poor little scared kids who have gifts like my wife and daughter. These are the kids that tell mommy and daddy there is a man in their closet or a monster under their bed. Many humans just chalk it up as a fear in the dark and fail to recognize the possibilities of what could truly be happening. My wife saw things at an early age that to this day still scare her. But not all those things those kids are seeing are evil. Like I said before, I had an imaginary friend when I was a child, who I now know was really my grandfather's spirit. If you had an imaginary friend or have a child who does it, may very well be a real friend or relative who is now their spirit guide. In my travels for work, sometimes my deliveries would take me down the street where she lived with her parents, and our son's house is right next door. The few months before she passed when I drove by, I never really seen anyone outside and always wondered what she was up to and hoped she was doing well. I thought maybe at some point I would see her outside. Sometime around the time she passed, but before I knew she had, I seen her mother coming home one day when I was on another delivery, and she looked kind of down. For all I know, that could have been the day Jen had passed. After Jen's passing, I will get deliveries and they yet again take me past their home. But after following the GPS directions, I realized that might have not been the fastest and most direct route to my destination. Remember, I talk to Jen's spirit even if I can't hear her myself, or not yet anyway. My wife lets me know she is going with me, and times when she doesn't, it feels different. I have told Jen's spirit something and told her if she has something to say, tell my wife, and within minutes my wife will text me with the answer or tell me what she said. You can try to deny it and say it's not real or possible, but I know it's 100% real. There is no human explanation for that. There are so many things in our world that are yet to be discovered. But I believe what I'm reading about an upgrade that the Earth is making from 3D to 5D. The Earth upgrades are going to start coming faster and more furious. I can't say for sure why I was navigated that way, but I was. There are other times when Jen's daughter was in front of her brother's house. One time she was walking one of Jen's dogs, and the other time she was sitting on her brother's step with her chin in her hands. As an empath, and I would imagine because Jen's spirit was with me, I felt a feeling of grief come over me, like I hadn't felt ever. I don't know if the universe is sending me that way so she can see her home and family or not, but also realize she doesn't need to travel with me to visit there. Her soul is also bonded with mine and merging with mine for a greater purpose, and because they are of one and the same, yet unique and individual mirrors of each other. If at this point you think I need a psych evaluation, trust me, I don't. I've already had them, as well as neuropsychological testing, and I'm not crazy. I'm autistic. I have ADD, anxiety, panic attacks, and a lifelong depressive order, but I'm not crazy. We are at the point in this journey where I may at times write something and it may not really mean anything to me, but someone reading this may know exactly what it means. I may inadvertently reveal things I had no way of knowing. I don't know if that's the case, but I'm learning as I go. When all this started happening, my wife told me things were going to happen in spurts or waves. She was again 100% on the money. It seemed like a lull in things last night until I remembered that Jen's spirit was on chapter 14 of her book of memories. This is about the age she met me in her lifetime. I was 3 years older, and I'm surprised her parents let it slide even after what happened later. They could have sent me to jail but didn't take that route. I was talking to her spirit and I said she was going to likely go from being extremely happy to extremely angry in the next few chapters. Now understand, it's not the feelings we feel here in the earthly realms. It's pure energy. When it's positive, it's going to feel like we, on this side, call love. When it's anger, it's going to be an intense negative energy. I may or may not feel it, but it's likely. I simply asked her to keep it as light towards me as possible. At that point, she spoke to my wife and stated she didn't kill herself. She said everyone thinks she killed herself. Although her actions over time might have led to that result, I don't think she meant they were saying that. Let me assure you at this point, I have no idea how she passed away or any knowledge of it except from these experiences I am having, and that it was unexpected. When Jen's spirit first awoke and started communicating with my wife, she revealed some things. Now this is what my wife, an experienced psychic medium, has seen and what Jen's spirit said to her. Let me first explain that things may not be exactly as how they are described, or it may not be the exact same item mentioned. It may also not make sense or add up to some people at first, and they may later realize it was something relevant. My wife seen a green bottle. She said it was some type of medicine bottle, and she said it looked like a bottle of melatonin. I can't confirm that personally and have no knowledge one way or the other. After looking up bottles that looked like what she saw, she learned it was a melatonin bottle. After doing a bit of research, we learned that many countries have banned the use of melatonin because it can cause fatal overdoses. If you had a certain type of health condition that can't process this, it may back up in your system and then release in a lethal dose. That is just my opinion, and you should seek medical advice from a doctor if you would like to know if that can happen or before taking or not taking any medication. This set off 24 hours or so of fast and furious synchronicities and signs. We must go back to the soundtrack of this journey again. The song Forever After All by Luke Combs keeps playing repeatedly, and when this all started happening, I discovered a song called Back from the Dead Alive by Hailstorm. Price of gas has been $3.33 at the gas station I go to almost daily for weeks, maybe even back to October when she passed. I was watching a video of one of the songs by Sully Erna I mentioned earlier. That video had 666 likes, and no, that's not a bad thing. It's an angel number, and you can look up what that means for yourself as well as any other angel number that you may be seeing. The son me and Jen had together was born in July of 1992. And when I went to pick up a delivery today, 792 was randomly spray painted on the pavement. At several points throughout the day, I will speak to Jen's spirit as she stays with me a lot, and I was on my way to a city outside of my delivery area, so I told her I will get lunch when I am there. I was texting my wife and told her I was eating lunch, and it reminded her Jen's spirit had been telling her I need to eat something all day, but she had been busy and hadn't been able to text me until that point. At one point, when I was talking to her, and a song by Keith Urban called Kiss a Girl came on the radio. I have one of those digital radios that tells you the song and artist, and it said Keithy. There is no Y in the artist's name or the title of that song. I took a picture of this. Another thing I also noticed was people were just looking at me like they were intrigued for some reason. Maybe they are feeling my frequency, or they're intrigued, I really can't say. As the day went on and I surpassed my daily goal, a song came on the radio and it said, "Work, work, work." I took that as a sign it was time for me to stop for the day, and after my next delivery I will be done. That delivery took me to the building where someone else from my past once lived. When I first started my polyamorous lifestyle, I dated one of my wife's longtime friends. Much like Jen, she had a problem with addiction, but too much hardcore stuff. I thought I loved her at the time, and she hadn't totally gone down her path of destruction at that point. I have come to realize now I was just trying to use her to fill some void I felt inside of myself. Then weird thing is, I have felt that void for years, and in the last 5 weeks or so, I haven't felt that way once. I'm usually a person who thinks impending doom is around the corner and every crisis will end everything, despite making it through everyone to date. A few years after we ended that relationship, she found herself in an abusive relationship, and my wife and I and another ex-boyfriend of hers helped her move out of the situation. She came to live with us for a little while, but she had already started down her path of self-destruction. When we were moving her out, the boyfriend tried to run us off the road by driving like a crazy person. I counteracted his move by driving on the sidewalk. I don't know why I did that even at the time, but now I know it was my guardian angel Amber taking the wheel. Both my wife and I have moved on from our relationships with her, as we have written her off as someone we can't help. I didn't feel that way about Jen despite everything that happened years ago. And if she had shown up at my door and said she needed my help, I would have done whatever possible to help her. I'm an empath and I attract a lot of broken people, but fortunately not all of them will allow you to be a healing force in their life. As you may have noticed, there is a pattern there, and I still have work to do to prevent myself from having to learn these lessons repeatedly. Lessons are repeated on our journey throughout lifetimes until we learn them. My wife and I were eating dinner today, and she asked me if we are twin flame souls, and we need to connect, why she doesn't just reincarnate in another person and merge with their soul. At first, I didn't have an answer, but after going outside and thinking about it for a few minutes, the answer suddenly came to me. As we discussed about twin flames passing away and then reincarnating, there are several reasons why this would not work. The first is you would reincarnate in a newly born human body, causing a massive age difference. Another reason would be it may be possible for the soul that reincarnates and the living twin flame soul to miss each other during the newly incarnated soul's lifetime, and they would both have to repeat the cycle throughout lifetimes until they connect. This is where I came to a very interesting realization. The answer that came to me was not that it's necessary to reincarnate for our souls to merge. As our souls continue the bond and merge process, they will have shared experiences. I keep seeing messages. I'm going to meet a person I've been looking for all my life. We are just going to connect, and it's going to be a loving relationship that flows like no relationship I've had before. So there is no need for Jen's soul to reincarnate in another body, and she will experience this relationship and love just as I am. I can't say for sure, but I'm going to conclude that it's likely Jen felt this same type of void in her life that I have all my life. Now this leads me to some other questions. I thought how a new person's soul is going to fit into the equation. This person is likely going to be someone who is in both of our soul tribes. I think it is necessary to have that type of connection right away, but not to the extent of twin flames. I believe this will allow us to experience a love we hadn't been able to share in life. In my research of this subject, others have had this type of experience and found the type of relationship I mentioned. They won't be part of our souls, but they will also feel something they have never experienced in life. Time will only tell on this, but I have no reason to doubt it at this point. At some point, psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, scholars, and others may study this journey and reach some conclusion that I have some unhealthy attachment to Jen, even now that she has passed. I assure you, even though I didn't get closure in the earthly realm, it is irrelevant. I am not experiencing something that requires therapy or medication. When I did take medications a doctor prescribed for anxiety, I had an adverse reaction and became an angry, evil person. You can no more fix this with drugs than you can cure autism, which is part of a person's personality and soul. Even when it comes to modern medicine, it is not advanced as much as we need it to. In many cases, the placebo effect is much more efficient. That will lead us into natural healing like Reiki, crystals, and frequencies. Do not take any of these practices lightly. They have greater healing power than you can understand. There is no greater power than to heal oneself than from within. There are no external forces that can create the healing need for some journeys here in the earthly realm except for angels, archangels, and other healing light beings despite them not being in our physical realm. How that process was going to happen was chosen by forces I do not fully understand. There are many cases of miracle healings throughout our world with no human understanding, or not at this point yet. Remember, we only use a small portion of our brains, but that makes me ask why cases of autism are suddenly being diagnosed more frequently and more accurately. There is a purpose. There are more and more autistic people being diagnosed and born. Once they embrace this and understand themselves collectively, they will go on to change the world we live in. That is why many autistic people are highly intelligent and have extreme math skills. I know I've gotten off topic a little, but it's relevant to the story. This morning, my wife walked in the room and was singing a song, Take My Breath Away by Berlin, and she couldn't stop singing it. She said she really didn't like the song, and Jen's spirit told her she did. My wife often sings Christmas music, and she strongly dislikes it and has no idea why she is, aside from one's spirit may have loved Christmas. That has happened for years and since long before now. I, of course, had to watch the lyrics video. Then Jen's spirit said finally to my wife, "I don't know what the message or meaning of it is, but it will be revealed at the appropriate time." As an autistic person, I notice patterns in everything, and especially if something doesn't fit properly in the pattern. I've been trying to do more research on the soul bond process, but there is very little info readily available. There are some examples in pop culture, such as in the works of Marvel and DC, as well as J.K. Rowling's book series Harry Potter. There are also some examples in various role-playing video games. There was a pretty good description, but for whatever reason, they had to list it as fiction. If I was to guess, I would say it's for legal reasons. They stated in their description of soul bonding that it was as old as humanity and that it's been found both in the Bible and mythology. I will quote the author of the article here. "It is usually portrayed as unbreakable and irresistible, a force that unites two people in a unique way. A soul bond can persist after the death of one or both partners and through numerous reincarnations. It can be very similar to soulmates, which are two or more people who are always meant to be together, or to twin flames, two persons born from a single original soul. The two go their separate ways, reincarnating many times, then spending their last lifetime or two together on Earth so that they can reunite in ascension, no longer needing to reincarnate." Literature featuring this type of bonding dates back at least to early 20th century. This leads me to the conclusion that actual soul bonding is rare and only happens to true twin flames. Soulmates and soul tribes form a bond before coming to Earth, but they are more likely companion souls to help you on your journey. Soulmates and soul tribe members can be strictly platonic relationships or lovers. In some instances, all of these can be siblings. In the case of twin flames, it is likely they would be born as twins. That very well may be why twins, triplets, etc. tend to be in sync with each other, or in tune in simpler terms. That would lead me to the conclusion that in the cases of triplets and quadruplets and so on, this may be a case of the twin flame soul being spread between more than two people, likely for some bigger purpose I don't understand yet. My wife stated Jen's spirit said she had to watch what would be described here on our side as a movie. She was being shown memories of when we first met in life. She said she liked it and it was playing on a loop because there is something she needs to learn from it. She also said she was a turtle in a shell. When Jen and I were younger, she was a turtle in a shell. She hadn't experienced life yet. The only way I can describe it is that she was a goody-goody. She tried to be good and not get in trouble, but she had a few times that didn't work out listening to me. My mother believed other people were a bad influence on me, but I had that down pat myself. Of course, later in life that changed for her. Other people enabled her and became bad influences in her life, but they didn't make her choices of what she did. She also told my wife she has found a way to communicate with me, but she's been speaking to me in a multitude of ways between the signs and speaking through my wife. After Jen passed, a woman in a group for polyamory me and my wife have been in for years was asking my wife if she could message me. My wife told her it was fine, and she started messaging me not long after. I have communication issues due to the condition I live with. When people message me, they must keep my attention or I will lose interest. It was never like that when I talked to Jen in life. It always just flowed. It was like I never stopped talking to her. I have been noticing interesting patterns and things in this conversation. When I first started talking to this woman, I knew nothing about her or what she looked like. I went into the whole thing with the idea it was going to be a learning experience for me. I have communication challenges, and I figured at the least I could use it to improve my skills talking to people. I just talked to this woman and didn't even ask her what she looked like at first. The conversation just kind of flowed like when me and Jen used to talk. It almost felt like Jen was using her or my guides, put this person there to show me things. I've been extremely busy lately to the point like there isn't enough hours in the day. Trust me, the few years before this one often felt like there was too many hours in the day, but not now. I keep talking to this woman for a while and I get caught up in something and forget to get back to her for a while. Remember, I have ADD as well as autism, and this is a symptom of those. It's not intentional, but it keeps happening. Jen used to message me for a while like that and then vanish for a while and not message me at various points throughout life. It used to make me so mad and confused. I now take this as a message from Jen, showing me a pattern I need to break moving forward. The woman stated it's okay and she understands. We have been talking about what we are looking for and what our interests and some other deeper stuff. It feels almost as if Jen's spirit is using this woman to get to know who I am as well as who I have always been. I now know what the woman looks like, and despite not being physically attracted to her, I can't stop talking to her. Remember, people are put in our paths for a reason. I can at times be overwhelming to people. There is something inside that oozes passion and is more than most people can handle. When I used to talk to Jen, it may have very well been that way for her. When I truly have strong feelings for a person, I can be a little overwhelming, and they may take it as clingy or pushy, or in some instances, overreaching. The woman was sending me messages in a similar manner that I may had when speaking to Jen in our lives. I had to let the woman know we are just talking, and that there should be no expectations, and she stated she understood. I didn't want to give anyone a false expectation. I also have been seeing a lot of posts lately about sharks. I even had some song pop up in my YouTube suggestions that was about a shark, but not the annoying baby one. I have no interest in sharks. I haven't searched any info about sharks. I don't normally even think about sharks unless I'm at the beach or if there's a news article about them, like just today. I also received inspirational quotes on my news feed, which include images of sharks. Basically, the only times I ever thought about sharks was when thinking about Jen in life and how I believe the shark may have been her spirit animal, or if it's Shark Week, which I have never even watched an episode of, but that may change now. Jen's spirit at some point today said she was talking to me in her own way, yet again, there is no way all these things are simply a coincidence. My daughter and I were on the porch today and she was drinking a Dr. Pepper soda. She has a bit of an addiction to this. We were talking about how yesterday she was thinking about something and it was making her angry and then she got squirted in the face by it. I have concluded between that and the rock being shot at my wife's car window, they both have stronger powers than they realize and they need to learn to control it. When me and my daughter were having the conversation about why that happened, we both thought we'd seen my wife's car coming down our street and her driving it. When it got closer, we realized it was a blue car like hers, but not her. I believe this to be a case of an imprint or a doppelganger. We've all been led to believe a doppelganger is another person who looks just like us, but that's not the case. If you do some research on doppelganger spirits, you will learn it's something totally different. Many people believe if they see their doppelganger, it means they are going to die, but that would only be true if it's your time to go. Remember, your path was determined before incarnating here in the earthly realm. In my research, often it's not you who sees your doppelganger, but someone who knows you, like my daughter and I had seen my wife. There are many instances of this phenomenon. People will say they've seen someone somewhere and describe what they were wearing. In some cases, they don't own the clothing mentioned and it hadn't been where they see them. This leads me to believe it's an imprint of some sorts. Either the person had been there or maybe at some point in the future. I can't explain that any more than anything that is happening to me, but I must believe it to be true. I have no reason not to. I came across a book written by a psychic medium on soul bonding, but there was no description. I know nothing of the author or the exact contents of her book. I simply know the subject, but not her views. I do not know if she experienced what I am, or she witnessed it with someone else, or if it's even remotely close to my situation. I'm not going to read this book until my story is told, but likely will after for research and to see if any similarities or answers are in it. That's her journey regardless, and this is mine. Although every case of this can be compared, I am sure everyone who experiences this will have similar things happen, yet completely different situations altogether. I now know some of the greater reasons for this story, but I still don't know the full reasons for this journey. Mine and Jen's souls are still connecting, and as far as I can tell, it will take some time to fully merge. I have felt there was a bigger purpose for my life for a long time, and this may very well be a part of that. Although I have no expectations, I know this message will reach those who needs to see it. It may very well be a guide for those who read it, and come after me for those who are going to go through this process but not understand what to expect. Heck, for all I know, it may very well have some purpose of changing humanity and views going forward. Remember, even the Bible has an Old Testament and a New Testament. Does that mean I think I am the second coming of Jesus? No, not at all, but I do think I have some purpose to help the earth and humanity evolve during the upcoming intense period of change to our earthly realm. What that entails has partially been revealed, and the rest will be at the very time it's meant to be. Chapter 6. Soul Integration. I'm trying to keep an open mind during this whole process, but I still have no idea what to expect. I have been experiencing some physical symptoms which may or may not be related to this process. Ever since I got sick about 5 years ago, I have been extremely fatigued and would be in bed by 10 at the latest, or I would pay for it the next day. Lately, it seems like there isn't enough hours in a day, and I find myself going to bed at 10, 11, and midnight in one instance. I used to be an early riser due to my career and needing time to myself before starting my day, but after getting sick, I could barely get up by 9 a.m. Now I have been waking up between 5 and 7 a.m. for the last month and a half or so, no matter what time I go to bed. I used to get a lot of stomach problems over the years, but I hadn't recently been experiencing them until the whole process began. Before I knew, I developed strategies to reduce anxiety. I used to get bad acid reflux. I had an extreme case of GERD with a loud, hollow burp that my wife describes as a frog burp. This is one of the signs I'm having an anxiety attack when I haven't yet recognized it. I haven't really been having too much anxiety in recent weeks, and I just have some great feeling of everything is going to work out. Despite that, I keep having stomach issues again, including cramping and acid reflux that leads to back pain as well. I've been having them for weeks now. It may be coincidental, as they say, or I may be feeling something Jen experienced in life. My wife said she was on chapter 23 in her book. This is around the time in her life when she was with her 3 other children's father and ex-husband Brian. She may be trying to show when her stomach issues began, and it may have to do with the things she experienced being married to him. She told me during her last encounters together in life she had stomach problems. Some of her stomach problems may have come from what she put into her body, but as I described in my case, it can also be a symptom of anxiety. I'm not saying anything negative about this part of Jen's life. I don't know the extent of what she may or may not experience in life during that point. Jen had told me before that her ex-husband was abusive, and one time he dragged her across the yard. I can't say if that's true or not, and only those who witnessed it can. I do know from mine and Jen's son's own words that he suffered abuse from him, so it's likely she did as well. There are others who know that part of her journey, and they are the ones to bring clarity to that part of this whole journey. I do know that someone who is in an abusive relationship is likely to have trauma, which will lead to an anxiety disorder. This is where the double-edged sword of alcohol appears. People often use alcohol to numb their pain, but they also use it as a coping mechanism. The problem with that is it only makes the problem worse. In yet another of these signs I've been receiving, I seen a post online that said you now have 2 sets of eyes, 2 sets of ears, etc. It didn't say now that you're in a relationship or having a baby. It got me to thinking after that. I started to think, does that mean I'm going to have improved senses like 2 pairs of eyes and ears? That may be a message, it's part of the process, I don't know at this juncture, but it will be revealed to me if it is. Remember, this is a learn as you experience. My wife Christine told me a few months ago I sounded like a guru. I took it as a compliment and said I must be saying something good then. Messages have been put in my path for quite a while now, but not to the extent of now. I often convey those messages to her because it sounds like something she needs to hear. She has told me she can't always hear her own guides. I really feel like they may be speaking through me to her, but she hasn't picked up on it either because of her ego or she just hasn't accepted it. I would also keep getting messages to work in silence and not to tell anyone my dreams. My guess is because that would interfere somehow with the desired outcome. There's a lot me and Jen had in common in life. A perfect example is both me and Jen had our hearts stomped on several times in life and by each other as well. When it came to others and us, we put up walls. This led to a lot of misunderstanding by the people closest to her. We all put up walls to protect us from being hurt, but in turn we hurt those around us. Jen could have had closer relationships with those around her, but her actions kept them from getting truly close to her. Her family was in her life, but after watching her actions for years, they tuned it all out. For me, I avoid my family because it's easier than trying to communicate with them. I'm the member in my family who is breaking generational curses, as we humans describe them. Mine and Jen's son does this as well. He learned that lesson from us well. He shields himself and has created a system to only let people in as much or little as he chooses to let them see. I think that's a big part of why he created an online persona. It allows him to be the person he is, but doesn't let anyone in enough to hurt him. Much like his mother and I, he will have to learn at some point, no matter what you do, you're going to get hurt. He has seen signs of this from trolls and critics. He has been doxxed, bullied, and a victim of pure evil hate from the low-life creatures among us. Jen's spirit visited her family's home and my grandfather's spirit on Thanksgiving. She said no one was there, and I can't confirm or deny that one way or another. She mentioned that her mother didn't even decorate. I told her they may not be in the mood to celebrate because of her passing. People do a lot of different things when they are grieving, and each has their own way of dealing with grief. I happened to catch a video of mine and Jen's son put out today. It's December 5th now, and in the video he said was Thanksgiving and he was home alone and had nothing better to do. Granted, he lives next to his grandparents in his own house. And it could have been later in the day, or what Jen's spirit said is very well accurate. He also mentioned he hated people lying to him and thinking he would be stupid enough to believe their lies. He got that from both his mother and me. I wish he was in my life because he might realize he's more like me than he realizes. Or that may be why he doesn't want me in his life. Maybe there's something in me he sees in himself that he doesn't like about himself. That may also be why he chose to deal with Jen as little as possible. As an autistic person, I often go over conversations I want to have with someone in my life in my head before the conversation ever starts. As an autistic person, it's our way of processing what may happen. It's our brain's way of trying to alleviate the stress of a conversation. I wanted to have a conversation with my wife, and she listened for once without interrupting me once. This was after I explained how if I get distracted or interrupted, it's not easy to switch back to topic. I believe this may very well be why some autistic people are nonverbal. It's not that they can't speak, but more that they fear the difficulty of communicating so much they just can't do it. I often go from having a meltdown to going into a shutdown. If I am continually getting my point across but keep getting interrupted, my brain can't handle it anymore, and I experience something called selective mutism. You shut down and become quiet because it's easier than trying to communicate. It's almost physically painful in a sense. Yesterday, I yet again had felt like I was in some lull in this whole process. After my wife and I spoke, I was online and spoke with the woman I have been talking to. She asked me how I was doing. I said, okay, but I'm working on making it better. She said she was willing to listen to my problems, but I told her I was okay. I already got it off my chest, but didn't tell her how. I had already talked with my wife, but earlier I had also talked to Jen's spirit. I told her how in life I just wanted someone to talk to her and listen to me and how it was supposed to be her. Don't take that the wrong way. My wife and me bump heads due to our defense mechanisms we have created in life. Sometimes it's hard to talk to her. Yes, sometimes it's hard to talk to me too. My wife has poly partners and friends she can talk to, but I have been lacking in that department a little. Part of the things I live with affect communication and trust, but others from life's circumstances. Others I lost when all the drama happened after mine and Jen's last encounters in life. One of those friendships that ended at the time was with an old high school friend. He didn't know the whole story, and I got made out to be a villain as well. We had a strained relationship from times in the past during my addiction when I robbed him, but in my defense, he had stolen one of my girlfriends before that. The good old law of karma, I guess. My wife was looking into my eyes last night and she said I had snake eyes. No, she didn't mean I'm a slimy reptile. The eyes are said to be the gateway to your soul. This is one of her ways of reading people. She can look at a picture and connect with person's deceased loved one, but not always. In some cases, maybe they have reincarnated and that's the reason she can't connect. That's just my opinion, though. She often can look in living people's eyes, whether by picture or in person, and tell if they are pregnant and what gender the baby may be. Back to the snakes in my eyes thing. One definition says it's a cast of two, like two aces or two ones on dice. It could be that snakes are my spirit animal, or it could be I dislike snakes quite possibly because they killed me in a past life. I have also had the need to shower more often as of lately. I normally will shower twice a day because I also have arthritis, and it helps warm the chill that gets in bones. I'm a water sign and do cleansing rituals in the shower and wash away negative energy from my day, but I have been showering like 4 times a day. A lot of clarity and answers have come to me in there as I am a water sign. I am attracted to water but have no desire to go on a boat, especially when some days it feels like I'm on one on dry land. I had a shutdown when my wife and I helped Jen move back home. She said the worker guy seemed nice and I immediately shut down. I thought she knew about the poly thing at that point. Don't get me wrong here. Jen didn't understand fully how I felt at that point and I hadn't explained it well enough. Did I have ill intentions or ulterior motives here? No, not at all. I will remind you I loved Jen all of my life, even when I told myself I didn't and stuffed it down inside. She told me she and her children were in a bad and abusive situation, and I would have done anything I could to help her and her children. If we would have only been friends after that, I would have been the best friend I could have been. I loved Jen in this life and wanted to also redeem myself for what I had failed at before. If that meant just being her friend, I would have taken that over what happened any day. Despite feeling like this process was in a lull yesterday, I did at one point feel like my energy dropped. Earlier in the day, my wife sent a text message and it set me off because it was negative. That's what led up to this whole conversation I had with her. After those 2 experiences, I felt drained and like my energy dropped drastically, and I felt okay most of the day. My wife said her PK manifestation kind of scared Jen's spirit yesterday. It wasn't going to hurt her, was just strong energy and her spirit felt it, and I think the stomach problems I was having yesterday were the result of this. Remember, on their side, it's a pure energy form, not the human emotions we feel. Today when my wife spoke with Jen's spirit, she said to go to her grave. There's something we needed to see there. We didn't notice anything except footprints and a flower pot was tipped over. My wife fixed it, but we didn't notice anything different since our last visit. Her spirit told my wife to look at the footprints and that people had gone there more. This again leads us to the soundtrack of this whole journey and yet more signs. Think back to when I told you about Take My Breath Away by Berlin. It gave my wife chills when I played it, and she said it doesn't happen to her often. It does happen to me quite a bit, especially if I'm meditating, or I can feel I'm being touched by angels' energy. When I was at work yesterday, it came on the radio. You can call it a coincidence, but I know it's a sign. Now, to take that farther, I was listening to other music online by one artist, and I seen a suggestion for another song by a different artist. I didn't really like the song, but seen one I couldn't ignore. Let me start by saying I am an amateur musician. I have some skills, but haven't mastered them enough to write a whole song. I keep telling myself I needed to write a song about not wanting to feel the pain of losing Jen again. I know I wasn't with her, but this assured it wasn't going to happen in this lifetime again, or so I thought. The song I came across is called Getting Over You Again. It's the closest to what I would have written, except neither me nor Jen would have likely been in a bar, but we likely would have handled the situation the same way. There's a lot of Jen's life I didn't get to see. There's a lot of Jen's life I did get to see. Do I believe there's answers to my questions about parts of it out there? Like I mentioned before, there could be letters or things I wrote when I was young, but Jen also told me in life she was going to therapy. I'm sure there could be answers in those records. Do I want to see what's in there? Of course I do, but only to answer my questions. Would I ever try to get that information? Of course not. Now, if her family had questions, they may search out those records to better understand her life and more about why she did things she did in life. They already know who she truly was as a person. I don't know how HIPAA laws work for deceased people's records, and that would be for them to research if that's the route they want to take in life. What I need to know in this process has continually been revealed to me, and I don't expect that to stop anytime soon. When my wife was talking with Jen's spirit today, she's seen a vision of her knitting. My wife feels Jen had only two sides to her. She was the woman who wanted to be a mom first, then someday a grandmother and watch her grandchildren grow up. And the side she showed during her darkest times in life and during her throes of addiction. I can confirm she told me she wanted to one day sit on the porch watching her grandchildren playing. During my experiences with Jen in life, those are exactly the two ways she would have been. On one side, she was an innocent, loving, and beautiful soul. On the other side, she had a dark side, a side of her she built to protect her from getting hurt in life, to numb whatever pain she experienced from things that happened in her life. Those were her demons and darkness, and she was supposed to find the light during those times. But over and over, she missed the signs or had to jump quickly into her next move in life. Life doesn't often give us time to think about our next steps. It just sends us something to make us move. Every one of us is unique, but I, like Jen, much only have two sides. I can be the most loving, passionate person you ever met, or I can be the worst nightmare, sometimes unintentionally. None of us can judge anyone else, not her life and choices she made, not my life and choices I made, or your life and the choices you made. Judgment is not for us. You also must consider what led to the person making the choices they ultimately had to make. People also tend to turn to drugs and alcohol when life has overwhelmed them, or they don't know how to handle it. I have communication issues, but if you add the right amount of alcohol, I can be the happiest, most talkative person you ever met in your life. I quite literally would be the life of the party. That, unfortunately, can come with some serious consequences. I'm at the point in my journey where I'm beginning to have more questions than answers. I had a lot of questions before Jen passed, and when this process started. I have so many more questions now. I must ask myself if after Jen is done with her book of memories, will she have to read mine to see what I have experienced so she can help me move further in life in this process? I don't know if that's even necessary or not. There may be things she needs to understand to help her understand what happened during her journey in life and why things are going to happen to her in the afterlife. I also wonder if there is some guidebook on how to use her energy to do things or show me things. My wife seen Jen in what she described as a spirit assembly. She said it was a white room with lots of chairs and a speaker on a stage or something. She could see Jen clearly, but not all the spirits next to her. She couldn't hear what the speaker was saying or tell what they looked like. That leads me to believe that some things can't be revealed even to a psychic medium. My best guess is this is a class to teach the spirits rules of what they can or can't do, or teach them how to do things. My wife said there was only the pumpkin and those flowers on Jen's grave, so we decided to purchase a small flower to place there for Christmas. When we went to the store to purchase it, when we were pulling into the store, we saw some rays of light from the sun shining down in from between a cloud. I used to think that was souls being sucked up to heaven. That's the whole biblical concept of the heavens above and hell below us as opposed to coexisting. I concluded that those rays were either healing light energy being beamed down, or they were those DNA upgrades being sent to our planet I mentioned earlier. It just clicked for some reason and made way more sense to me. I was sitting in the car thinking and realized I was sitting like my friend Brian, who passed away, would have been if he was there. I was like, nice one, dude. My friend Brian was a free spirit in life and enjoyed life as fully as he could, taking in the entirety of every experience he had in life. My wife said his spirit is just smiling and feels freer than he ever has. After my wife and I left the plant at Jen's grave, her spirit said it made her very happy and she felt alive. Well, in a sense, anyway. My wife said she was in the center of the back seat of the car with her arms outstretched across the back of her car. My wife made me feel the spot where her spirit arm was, and it felt cold to both of us. Usually when a spirit is in a certain spot, it will feel colder than the area around the spirit. The woman who was sending me messages had slowed down in her frequency of contacting me since I told her I already got things off my chest. I don't know why, except maybe she sensed I wasn't interested in the type of relationship she was looking for, or it's something that hasn't been revealed yet. Time will tell. It's Wednesday, the 8th of December now, and Monday of this week I oddly didn't hear Easy on Me once on the radio all day. I asked my wife if Jen had not been with me, and she confirmed that that was the case. The very first 2 songs after placing the flower on Jen's grave were Easy on Me and then Knowing You Yet Again. The very first 2 songs on the radio when I went to work today were those same 2 songs. Last night I was listening to the version of Easy on Me with Chris Stapleton, and my wife yet again had gotten the chills. I don't know why she keeps getting chills from music more, but she said it didn't happen all that much to her before. I needed to purchase some cannabis, and while I was inside Jen's spirit, asked my wife if she would go by her family's home, and she agreed because it was on our way home anyway. Before getting there, she told my wife her and her family had decorated for Christmas, and lo and behold, I could see the tree gleaming in the window as we went by. Oddly, my son's house had the regular lights on inside, and that's rare for his house when I passed by. After getting home, my grandmother on my father's side and my Aunt Linda's spirit decided to take Jen's spirit to my mother's house. They, like my grandfather, also liked to pay my mother visits. They told my wife they messed with her electronics. After returning to my home, my grandfather decided that it was his turn. He felt he should keep knocking her Christmas ornaments off her tree. Now we are going to get into a part of this journey where you may be freaked the hell out. Trust me, I sure as hell was. When coming back from placing that plant on Jen's grave, my wife had almost gotten to our house when she started having a migraine. This is a chronic condition for her. Then she started getting freaked out, and it scared me. When we got to my house, she rushed me and told me to get in the house, and my daughter who was on our porch as well. She stated there was a gorilla-like demon trying to get us. I was much more scared at this point. We don't know what it wanted, and our guides formed a massive line to protect us, kind of like an energy blockade. After about 15 minutes of being freaked the hell out, my wife's guides let her know it was defeated. I must remind you at this point, there is good and evil on earth and on the other side. I also know good always prevails over evil in the long run. I'm glad I couldn't see this, but was still freaked out for a while after that. But can you blame me? Those things are on the other side. I have no desire to see. After all that and everything had calmed down, my wife and I were watching TV. We were watching a show which includes a real former police detective who researches the background and what happened at the location they are investigating, and a psychic medium who does her own type of investigation. They were going to do their reveal of what they both found during their investigations. There was an evil spirit in this location and several others. In her reveal, she explained to the homeowner that spirits go to places that played the most significant role in their lives. This brought me to tears. Did Jen really think or believe I played the most significant role in her life? Just the thought of that blew my mind, and I couldn't stop crying for a few minutes. My wife and I decided to go to bed after the show, and Jen's spirit tried touching my hand, but after realizing again she felt alone, she told my wife, despite the fact I could feel physical sensation on the top of my hand. After a few minutes, she was joined by the spirit of 3 dogs, a black one and 2 chihuahuas, I believe. She kept calling one dog Piggy over and over and was extremely happy, as my wife explained. I'm pretty sure she called the dog she had, that passed away a few years ago, Piggy, but I am not 100% sure. I am unsure still what is to come in this process, but I keep discovering more on a regular basis. I am trying to live life and process this at the same time. I woke up a little later than usual today, and after a long debate with myself, I decided I was going to take the day off. I'm not in a financial struggle in my life and have the blessing to be able to work when and if I can. Some days I physically can't do, but it has improved in the last year. I have good days and bad days, but who doesn't? I was taking a shower, and for some reason I thought maybe there was answers on Jen's profile about what the last few years of her life were like. Also, you can only see so much of a person's profile unless you're in their friends. I learned a couple of things, one of which led to another experience I never dreamed of. The first thing I noticed is a lot of her public posts are very similar to things I have shared myself, and some were the same. It was almost as we were both speaking to each other without either of us seeing the posts. I guess kind of like we were tuned into each other's vibe, which makes a lot of sense considering what I am experiencing in my life. I also learned Jen had 3 surgeries a year or 2 ago. I had no idea. This is when I noticed the person who played the largest role in all the drama years ago was still in her friends, and he had commented. I got a bit angry about it, and yet, again, it added more questions to my list of questions. Jen's spirit could feel I was upset. My wife said it felt like we had our first fight, and we did in a sense. My guess is this is the new relationship, as it's different than either of our souls have experienced before, and it's not the relationship we had in life. I don't know the full extent of Jen and his relationship in life, but my wife did point out how she didn't even respond to his comment. Jen was the type of person who would try and see past people's character flaws. She tried to be nice to everyone, but sometimes that has unintended consequences. I am much like that too. Jen's spirit could feel I was upset. I was upset, of course. This person got to see parts of the final years of her life I didn't get to see. Wouldn't you be? How much of her life is likely less than what the guy would have liked. I know Jen only let people see as much of her life as she chose. There were likely parts this guy didn't ever see, but I did, and no matter what he or anyone else thinks, I did what I could do to try and help Jen get help and fix her problems. I wanted to build a relationship with her and be there for her during her journey to healing, but that opportunity was cut short years ago. Turns out I was having my first argument with the spirit. Who even knew that was a thing? I sure didn't. At this point, my wife said she had taken a shadow form, but not the kind you would see. She said her energy was vibrating a lot. Many things happened during mine and Jen's last encounters in life and for a while afterwards. When she sent me those messages the last time, a year or 2 ago, I had trust issues with her. After what happened years before that, I wasn't letting my guard down. I must learn to totally trust Jen's spirit during this process. I had lingering trust issues with her in life, and those just don't go away overnight just because someone passes away. I also learned that even a spirit can give you the silent treatment. Even in this process, understand no spirit is going to have a non-stop interaction with you, but this literally was a case of, I am not listening to you. This is just another step in the soul bonding process. Both myself and her need to rebuild our trust so I can trust again in my own personal relationships. Trust me, I have issues there from past experiences and the conditions I live with. When you have seen the ugliest in people, it can really take a toll in the trust department. I told her spirit she can keep ignoring me, but I'm going to keep talking. My wife at times uses that same method to show she is unhappy about something. I have learned that if I just act goofy and do dumb things, she will eventually give up and start laughing and get over what she was upset about. I see a lot of similarities between my wife and Jen. There is obviously a reason I was attracted to both. After a while of me telling her how I felt, she took her original form and was okay with everything. I think she kind of understood where I was coming from. I also think that at times my brain can make things out to be worse than they are. That's the anxiety monster that lives within me. Look, much like the creepers that live in my basement, that guy is a low-level creature. There were a couple reasons I was upset. One, Jen seen past his character flaws, and with the fog of addiction, you often make poor judgments. This guy is not the nice little friend he claims to be. He did things behind the scenes that Jen didn't see or couldn't see. It went way too far, and it's a form of bullying, and there came a point when I wasn't going to take it anymore, and I peacefully fought back with hurtful words. People with autism are often bullied, but when you're undiagnosed, people will do it to a much greater extent. He wanted Jen, and I was the major obstacle in his plan. He did whatever it took to remove me from Jen's life. I kind of feel bad for him to a point. I know he has issues he lives with, and he was obsessed with Jen. He never got the chance I did, and he never will now. I couldn't imagine what he would think if he learned of my present journey. The other part that made me angry is I was made out to be a villain, and Jen didn't put an end to it. Jen's fog of addiction made her make quite a few poor decisions in life. I'm not judging her for her choices she felt she had to make in life any more than I want her to judge me for the choices I made in life. Although that guy played a role in this journey, he is insignificant in the greater scheme of things. I am not going to mention him again. As I mentioned earlier before, I realized she had still been friends with him. He is not worth another thought. At this point, I'm going to focus on the present part of my journey and what's to come. I'm going to work on ways me and Jen's spirit can communicate better, and hopefully she does too. Another thing I did learn from looking at her profile was she had long-term sleeping problems. If that's true, then it is likely she could have accidentally taken too much medication or melatonin, as I mentioned earlier. But that's the exact same thing that happened to Michael Jackson, but from a much more potent drug. Chapter 7. Evolution. It's been an interesting 24 or 36 hours, to say the least. It started when I went to work yesterday. I was thinking out loud about how it was early, and it was going to pick up in a little while. Within 10 minutes of me saying that, my car radio spelled out, it's ERLA. It didn't really get all that busy, and I went home after a while. After being home for a while, my wife said Jen's spirit was walking around our bedroom looking for something. This made her have what we humans call a panic attack, but this wasn't just a panic attack. It was debilitating. Jen's spirit was showing my wife she had debilitating panic attacks in life. Before my wife even said that, I was feeling dizzy and had massive tension in my neck. I knew I was having an anxiety attack, but had no idea why. I wasn't doing anything to cause myself anxiety. I went outside for a minute and felt dizzy a bit. Anxiety will do that. After I came inside, my wife revealed she was having a debilitating panic attack. Yes, spirits can still feel these things or remember what they feel like in a sense. Jen's spirit showed my wife she would sit on the deck late at night and smoke cigarettes when she was having a panic attack, likely exacerbated by insomnia. I have now experienced a shared panic attack with Jen's spirit, and it was like what I had, but hers were way worse than what I experienced, as mine aren't debilitating, but can still be extreme, especially if you put me in an MRI machine. I am assuming this is part of the evolution of this process of soul bonding. This sent her into a shadow form, but not the kind you could see. After a while, when she calmed down, she came back to the hallway at first, and then fully after a while. I felt like I needed to give her a hug, but of course that isn't possible. Not yet, anyway. I just felt so bad she experienced that in life. I'm an empath, remember? At this point, my wife noticed she was on the last chapter of her book of memories. My wife had woken at 4:30 in the morning, and Jen's spirit had actually taken shadow form that she could physically see, not in the way she connects during a reading. Before I went to work, my wife said her spirit was going to be clingy today, but all I noticed today was easy on me was on the radio a whole bunch of times. This part of the journey may upset some of you, but it also may help you better understand what Jen lived with and how it affected her relationships with you. After years of struggling with her addiction and likely things they didn't fully understand, it led her family to kind of tune her out as much as they could anyway. Like she showed my wife, her kids had grown up and didn't need her as much. Her parents were wrapped up in their own lives, and even her fiancé started paying less attention to her, according to her spirit. Jen's spirit showed my wife she could depersonalize and could even have depersonalization disorder. Remember, Jen had told me in life she was in therapy. Her family knew she had anxiety, but I don't think they understood the extent of it. Let me explain, this disorder is complicated and very hard to treat. So even if in therapy, it must be geared to each person with it specifically, and the therapist can only go by as much as they have been told. Some people develop this from PTSD, but in Jen's case, I think it was her brain creating a defense mechanism to protect her. Now, you can do your own research on this disorder and make your own conclusions, but I will try to explain it somewhat. But no one will know exactly what it feels like unless you live with it, much like autism. The first thing it can cause is fatigue from doing even simple tasks. It often makes people think you're lazy or unmotivated. In one instance, it's like you're on autopilot, like going to the bathroom and doing everyday tasks. A person will even respond to questions, but it feels like they weren't really part of the conversation. It makes the person feel numb and constantly have a down feeling. This can cause relationship issues because for the person who has depersonalization, it feels like your relationships aren't real. It's like being in a constant dream state to the point you can't tell if something in your dream really happened or not. Even when looking in the mirror, it feels like they are looking at a stranger. The only thing I personally can compare it to is being on LSD and continually telling yourself none of this is real, or almost an out-of-body experience where you see your life as you're looking at someone else's life. Now, I'm not a mental health professional and I'm not diagnosing Jen with anything. I am simply relaying what my wife was shown by Jen's spirit, and that there are some things she lived with none of us understand. I also want you to know that you can't feel bad for not being able to help her. You're not equipped for that, and neither am I. I came to another realization. That guy with all the drama may have been a blessing in disguise after all. I have been dealing with a lot of my own things over the last 5 years or so, and I don't think I would have been strong enough to handle what she was dealing with on top of my own problems. I also didn't go through the much more painful process of building a relationship with Jen for 7 or 8 years, only to have her fate being the same, but it would have hurt even more. For years, I had a lot of questions and didn't understand why things happened. I now know things had to happen the way they did to get us to the very point we are on this journey. The pain I would have experienced would have been worse than any time before. I couldn't imagine, and I'm not trying to look. Look, even the people in Jen's life didn't totally understand what she experienced and might have written it off as other things, like her addiction. But I implore you to look at this possibility if you're one of the people. In this evolution, I am being shown things through my wife's communication with Jen's spirit. Remember, the only person who totally knows you is you, and none of us can fully understand what she experienced, any more than she could have felt what it's like to be you. She is getting to feel what it's like to be me in a way. At this point, some of you may be appalled, angry, or think I am crazy. I understand this is hard to believe, and some things I'm telling you may seem unbelievable or like a dream. I assure you, it's 100% real. I want you to remember I am not writing this alone. Forces beyond my full understanding and Jen's spirit are helping me with this story. My only intention here is to relay the message as I am being given and show the world who Jen was as a person. I do not want to paint her in any negative light, as she is a beautiful soul and was a beautiful person despite her flaws. We all have them. Jen's spirit wants me to help her right her wrongs, and I will do everything in my power to help her do so and help myself grow and heal in the process as well. At this, doing a deep dive and some reflection may help you better understand her as well. Forget all the negative that happened over the years. Take a long, hard look down memory lane and all the wonderful things she did for you and others as well. I am doing my best to relay her message to the world and tell her story from her point of view as much as possible. This is all the wonderful times you had. She doesn't want you to remember her for what she became. She wants you to remember her for who she was before all that stuff happened. Much like Jen's soul and mine are going through an evolution, so are you. You are evolving to a new world without your mother, daughter, sister, brother, fiancé, or friend here in the physical realm, but she will forever be a part of you and your life. Look, they aren't memories, they are experiences, and no one can ever take them from you. Well, it's 12:12 now, and today was interesting to say the least. Not only are 5 planets in alignment, but today is the beginning of upgrades to our planet. A portal has opened, and great change is coming, especially over the next year. How that affects you depends on you, I guess. I woke up a little later than usual, and after a while, something said to take the day off. But I said no and went to work anyway. Before I left, I first seen a shark post, yet again. When I first left, I forgot my crystal necklace and my mask. Yes, we are still wearing those at this point. I was almost empty on gas but had to rush back to my house and get the crystal. I felt odd without it on and had to get it. I drove to the gas station and arrived on almost empty, and I never let my gas tank get that low. I kept getting orders all day that I had to wait like 10 minutes for each. The average day, it's only certain places, and the average wait times are less than 5 minutes most days. My wife told me maybe I should come home earlier, but I figured I would just push on. On the way to my last delivery, there was an accident where someone had hit a parked car, and the entire front end of their car was crushed. I texted my wife that, and she reiterated maybe something was telling me to go home. I took that as a sign and went home after that delivery. One of my deliveries today was to the house directly across the street from the house my wife lived in when we first met. After coming home, my wife said my guide said starting over when I told her about the delivery. She doesn't know what that means, and at this point, neither do I. Like so many times before, I just tell myself it will be revealed and it will make sense to me, but not as of this time. After I came home, I had a bit more shocking of an experience. My wife could feel Jen's spirit having extreme anxiety. She showed herself screaming extremely loud in a hyperventilating type manner. She was having a panic attack, but in a different manner than the debilitating one the other day. My wife said she could feel it, and so did I, but not as intensely as the other day. I had a physical sensation of anxiety, but my wife feels it in a different way I can't explain well. It's strong energy, like when an evil spirit communicates with her. Those type of spirits make her have a yucky, uncomfortable feeling throughout her body. She showed my wife she was angry she passed away, again. I think it almost feels like a dream to her and it wasn't real. Some spirits can take a while to come to grips with the fact they are no longer in human form. Some spirits take longer than others, as my wife explains it. This may be what my guides meant by starting over. This also may be something she had experienced in her life. If she experienced depersonalization in life, it may have carried over to the other side and can take a while to get past. I remember one time specifically when my wife and I helped her. She told me she needed to go home and help get her kids ready for school and on the bus. It didn't make sense to me then because her kids were teenagers and wouldn't have needed the help. I thought maybe she was just making an excuse that she wanted to go home. If that was the case, she didn't need an excuse or to lie. She knew she could tell me anything. And if she wanted or needed to go home, I would have been more than happy to bring her there no matter what the reason, which I did after she asked me. If I correctly remember, that's the last time she was at my house. Depersonalization is complicated, much like autism, and no one can understand either of these things unless you live with them. My wife came across another example of soul bonding this evening while doing a reading for a family friend of hers. The woman's husband died a few years ago. My wife was looking at a picture of her and her grandson, and she could see that her husband's spirit had soul bonded with her grandson. This now makes only the 4th time she has experienced this. After Jen's spirit calmed down, she told my wife she was going to visit her children and to tell me she would be back. I told her spirit to take her time. I understand, and I will be here for her when she comes back. She returned after a while, and she has been quiet or not very active. I am sure what she experienced in visiting her children takes a lot of energy and would imagine her spirit is resting now. The activity has started coming in ebbs and flows or waves more now. I will get a low, then be directed home, and at some point, and then things pick up. The next day after the last experience, Jen's spirit was in classes all day. She showed she was relieved they were over and her spirit was walking around relaxed. After a while, she started communicating with my wife more. She stated how she wasn't religious. I knew when she was younger she went to church more, but hadn't in more recent years unless it was more in the last few years. She told my wife she cares for me and felt at ease. Her spirit even made the joke she would die for a cup of coffee. Spirits still have their sense of humor, and my grandfather said when he visits my mother and lets her know he is there, that is living, in a sense. It is, considering. She also said she misses Shark Week. When I had to inform her it wasn't the time of the year for it, but I will watch it when it is. It's just a simple token of showing her I am willing to do things that will make her soul happy, as it in turn will make my soul happy as well. At this point, she wanted to know why my wife and daughter could see her, but I couldn't. I tried hard to see, and I could see a white haze and the rough outline of a person in my bedroom doorway. It would take an immense amount of energy to fully manifest. She is still learning how to use that energy fully. But my grandfather followed suit, and I could see an actual shadow of him in my doorway. After that, he paid my mother yet another visit. He decided to keep touching her face, and he showed my wife she kept touching her face like she felt a bug on it. Before we went to bed last night, my wife's guides decided to show her things she did in the past, and she felt bad for them. This whole process is helping us work on our relationship as well. I know this can be a little all over the place at times, but that's how it happens for me, and I must piece together the answers to the puzzle. Today, Jen's spirit stated to my wife she can't remember why she kept falling, and mentioned she had vertigo before she passed. I have Meniere's disease, which affects your vestibular system. For me, it causes tinnitus and disequilibrium and a general feeling like you're on a boat while on dry land. It can even make you feel or appear drunk at times. When I have a flare-up, I end up having to lie down and go to sleep. It also can cause drop attacks where out of nowhere you feel off balance and drop or almost drop to the ground. I at times must hold on to a railing. In the last 5 or 6 years of Jen's life, she had health problems, and it's quite possible she may have had Meniere's disease, as it's very hard to diagnose. I also have experienced health problems over the same time frame, and we could have quite possibly been having a shared experience. It may very well have been a clue or a precursor to what is happening now. It would be hard to totally piece that together. When my wife and I were on our way back home earlier today, the light beings like the ones that came to heal me were healing Jen's spirit or something in the back seat of my wife's car. I don't know what they were healing in her soul, or if they may have been providing knowledge or enlightenment. They may have just been showering her with their pure, loving energy as well. She was at ease again today. I've been seeing 333 everywhere today, and the price of gas today was still $3.33 at the station I go to. About a week or so ago, I told my wife that if the Powerball hit 333 million, I was going to play and win. I will be buying a ticket for tomorrow's drawing, which is now $333 million. I will await the results of that and keep you updated. I do keep getting messages all over the place that my life is about to change for the better drastically. Not that it hasn't changed in amazing ways already. On the way home from another place we went, Jen's spirit told my wife to hold my hand for her, and my wife let me know why she was holding my hand. My wife kept getting a message to listen to, Right Here Waiting for You, by Richard Marx. After listening the first time, Jen's spirit told my wife to have me play it again, but close my eyes and really listen to it. She was also touching my body with her energy. I listened to a different version of it, and when it was over, tears poured out of my eyes. I had been trying to learn how to play that song for a couple of years and could play along decent with it. Well, the lead part anyway. Jen's spirit told my wife she loved Richard Marx. At this point, my guides told my wife to hug me tightly, and she did. Jen's spirit also let my wife know she could feel people touching her when she first passed away. It took a lot of energy for all these experiences. Let me tell you, I have had minor contact with the other side and seen some things, but I have never had this much interaction with a spirit, or spirits, should I say. If this is all unbelievable to you, I understand, trust me. Although I thought of Jen over the years and hoped the best for her, I never imagined anything like this. I was at a point where I accepted I likely would never have another relationship with Jen in life, and it turned out that way in the end. I couldn't make something up like this if I tried. I have a pretty good imagination, but not that good. This story is writing itself, and whether you believe it or not, that's on you and how open-minded you are. I know there are things in this journey I can't confirm, but I know what needs to be revealed will be, and at the time the universe decides. This is an ongoing process and an evolution. That means although I am picking up on patterns, I still don't know what to expect from day to day. The last 2 days, things have been a bit off, to say the least. There was a major app crash one day, and then just today, my wife narrowly missed an accident by mere inches. I have faith and know these things will pass. I don't think it has to do with the whole process, but I do believe my guides are slowing me down for some reason. Even presently in this journey, the activity has calmed down a little bit. At this juncture, I must wait for the answers and signs to be revealed and enjoy any communication I am able to have with Jen's spirit as well as my other relatives. Does the journey end here? No, of course not. There is much more to be written, experienced, and revealed in my lifetime. This journey was decided before I incarnated on this planet, and I know it's eternal. All I know at this point is I can just enjoy this amazing and unbelievable journey or spend the rest of my life questioning it. I am not going to do the latter. I am just going to accept it for what it is and all that it has to offer. I may not know why this was chosen for me, but I know there is some higher purpose to it. I really do wish I had that poetry I wrote for Jen when I was young. They would have showed you all why I fell in love with her in the first place. I don't, though, but I will leave you for now with the poetry I wrote during those dark times I experienced after mine and Jen's last encounters in life together. I wrote these during all the drama that was happening. I want you all to understand exactly what I was feeling during that period in my life. I want you to also know I let that all go, and I forgive Jen for everything, and I hope she forgives me as well. I will do my best to make sure she can. I won't leave you with a goodbye at this point, because we will meet again farther along on this journey, and I look forward to telling you what has happened since we met last. Poetry from a darker time. Demons. They say your life is written, and you have a destiny. So sit inside your mind and try to contemplate what path for you has been chosen and what is your fate. You search for answers and a soulmate who doesn't exist. As you write your hopes and dreams and check each one off your bucket list in hopes that you find the one who completes you. You say you want love, but base your life's decisions on lust. You base your life's direction on self-centered needs and appearance rather than connection or trust. Till your next conquest and crossroads you seek, a protector to save you from what may lay ahead, some to help you to continue to live a life you don't regret or dread. At first there was excitement and thrills, but that quickly turned to emptiness and pain, which you washed down with devil's poison as you popped those pills. You did whatever you could to escape the world you created. You lied and used those who only helped and cared, till you became the person they despised and hated. Then you put up walls so they couldn't see inside the person you had become with all your secrets and lies, until they discovered the truth from your pawns in which you confide. You play those who care like a game of chess, using them as a pawn, until they discover your secrets and you need them gone. Sometimes there's no move left to make, there's no way to win, and sometimes your demons will do you in. Existence. I was born into a world to live in a different society, one based on logic and serenity, not fantasy or virtual reality. I have aspired to live up to my dreams and seen visions of serendipity, only for them to be shot down in a lifelong battle of indignity. I live a life of brutal honesty and rise to each test to fight the lives of those who try to look their best, only to pause and take a breath as I sit in deep thought. Oh, as I lay at rest, my mind will wander with visions and deep thoughts. Of each moment I ponder, was this a life of waste, and with it did I squander? Did I strive to be the best, or did I waste this life focused on the rest? Did I make the right choices? Did I pass the test? Will I focus on myself or let my mind be cluttered by the rest? Will I earn a degree or master a task? Will I hide behind education or some other mask? Only to realize I am a mere organism in a greater galaxy, a being of chance who has left a mark on society. Only to realize it doesn't matter if I am the president or the Mad Hatter. What mark I have left is simply for naught, as my purpose here I had surely forgot. My impressions are few, and the point is nil. We all know you and what you do, with all your hurt and hate, leaving a world no God would ever create. You have trolled and stalked through this life of chance, crying how bad your life is, when you have created this circumstance. Did you make your mark on the world, playing your game for a girl? Or was your existence so meaningless, no one will even remember you exist? Or did you leave a lasting impression, no matter how small? Or did you even exist at all? Sorry, it was a dark and dreary night, like the thoughts in my mind, long since burn out, like the fading and guiding light. No more regret from my past I can no longer hide or ever forget. Fading distant memories of my jaded past still haunting me, with guilt no longer warranted of thee. Too many years I wore that crown of failed relationships all over town, thinking back constantly and wondering how life might have gone differently if my choices weren't the same, leaving tears and lots of pain. Oh, how the years go by so fast when you pointlessly hold on to your past. You can't move forward if you keep going back, and even when you do, it is not as it seemed. You may learn your choices could have protected you from those who are not as they seem. You may find the person you thought you knew is not even remotely close to whom they used to be. A vision was shown to me by a guardian angel of the devil you had come to be. You are not the one where my guilt will ever lie, as I have a child whose life was forever changed by me. I must live with that and watching my child from afar. This is our relationship, a mere play where I am the star. But you're no better than me because you were there, but you rather play victim than live in reality. You are no more a parent than me. Hell, I have become more of a parent than you will ever be. I learned from my mistakes and continue to grow, as I hope someday my adult child will be someone I know. Or more so, I hope he will know me and who I am, and not who people would like him to believe me to be. This guilt that should be yours, I will no longer carry with me. I now put walls where doors used to be. So to my child I say, I am proud of the man you have become and who you are. No thanks to me, you have become the man you are, the one I watch from afar. For that, all I can offer is my sincerest apology. I stopped feeling the way in those poems long ago. I have come to realizations and revelations that have changed my mind considerably. If I can be in that dark of a place and still find the light and forgive Jen, it's the least anyone can do. She may not be alive in our earthly plane, but she has eternal life now, and she will forever be a part of my soul, and I am honored. Till we meet again, I wish you the best. This has been Soul Bond, written by Keith Rao, narrated by Marie Hathaway. Copyright 2021 by Keith Rao. Production copyright by Keith Rao.